stuck. I think maybe because we were on the ground, so then you kind of like rolled a little bit. So
Yeah.
might have saved your ankle.
Well, I had my boots on too, so I think it helped to stop it from going any further, so. But yeah, no. Had
Let's
a,
keep going to Kubota.
yes, it was. Always the Kubota.
Good. Well, we should have a lot of trees to deal with, but not as bad as some of our neighbors. We didn't have any big ones. Carol next door did. That's this, some. Yeah. For the, for their work.
And then just the one on top and then I'll sign the.
You're a notary too?
And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I have one question about what are the flood signs?
Signs that,
Around don't drown ones?
yeah, but they're the ones that were on flash when the water got actually hot. Okay. So people can see that and they're really obvious.
Okay,
But in only when they're hot.
how are you, Mayor?
Okay,
You have a lot of trees?
no, strangely, like, I mean, the village is kind of young trees right in our neighborhood, so for the most part, people did okay, there was some damage, but our property, we didn't have anything fall.
Oh,
And no
good.
trees fell, no ones or anything, right across the street, we had some neighbors, a big tree fell on the side, things like that, but, it's just kind of, you're really familiar to 2 years ago, except for all the tree damage, this time.
Where's it, do you know where it's safe?
We had that, were you here in 2007 when we had that ice storm?
Yeah.
It reminded me of that. The
Well,
trees
you know
were
what you
just
do is
covered
just hit that,
for days,
yeah, just-
longer,
just
and we lost quite a few trees, and that's.
How would you compare this one to that? Like, was the damage more widespread here than this one?
I think a lot of the bigger trees got hit this year. We lost a couple persimmons, some smaller ones. In that one, this one, I think because of the drought, the tree.
That's what I was thinking too, is that all the stress for the trees has been
Yep.
aggravating the aggravating like the damage that.
Yeah, I think that had an impact for sure. Hey, Rob.
We, they're just huddling and coming here,
Charge.
Well,
Warm.
yeah, I had this like, I took a picture of it that I like had this like surge protector with all of our, charges, like 10 different charges, like plugged into that area to the city hall, or to the police, on the projector and just plug everything off.
That's smart. That's smart.
We also had we got a new car, which is plug-in hybrid,
That one's one.
which,
Another
it has like a.
text. Oh,
Very much, right, so very limited, but we use that to.
yeah, because couldn't really drive anywhere, right?
It was, you just.
Hello, hello.
We were like, it's great.
Those little heaters were a lifesaver.
Yeah, we could. You just use it for that opportunity, but it's not. It's a colder house.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I brought them back from our neighbors, so we brought back a bunch today. Hello, Rudy. Hello, how are you? I'm good, how are you?
Good, doing well.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, fair. Get things cleaned up from there.
And I've got an
Lots of
extension
branches
cord
down.
also.
You got a lot of work.
I think she did work today. I think Dakota got him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How
See
about
the
you?
green lights on?
It's gonna be well. We didn't have luckily any real. Our neighbor,
Your.
Carol, oh my God.
your-
pop-ups?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Two big trees.
Yeah.
So we took out part of her second story deck, hit her roof on her porch, took out the gutter. Yeah, I feel so bad,
I do too.
but we were lucky. It was, the biggest one we had was about like this. And one came down on my car and it hit No, the mirror comes out, it just went right between the mirror and the door. Dented the top a little bit.
I parked Melissa's old truck in the back, under a big tree, and all the branches from the tree fell right into the.
How convenient. Ended up moving our cars, and Carol moved her car up to Ruth and Joe's house. They have a parking area that has no trees over it.
Right.
And it's a good thing we did, because the next morning they were blocking the driveway.
Yeah, after the power came on, we drove through all the streets.
It was depressing.
It was depressing.
Yeah, it still is. Hey, Bert.
Maybe I'll like issue it February 27th and get you March. I'm missing. That's what we're meeting. We're not discussing.
I think it was listed in the staff reports.
Okay, that's great. Maybe I was-
About- Yeah, I think it.
There's no,
That-
yeah, there's no agenda item related to it. We're gonna cover all that in, at staff reports. I'm sure those would be a lot of questions.
Because that's where it was listed, right? That was a word.
And, I'm sure there's gonna be a future, couple future agenda items, but, yeah, there's no official agenda item related to that. We can discuss.
And will you send me your latest version of this? Okay.
I gotta make sure I'm sending the right one.
No, I tried to clean them up. I have so many copies and versions. So, what, that was the other thing. For the joint meeting.
Oh, yeah, you gotta.
She's retired now. Okay, and so she went into the workbook and put it into a tech sheet. We can start tracking our progress and start building out tasks. Yeah, it's wood, so we have that, and we have the latest version. Oh, I know, too.
Is me?
Yeah.
I know, yeah.
All right. How are you? Doing good yourself? Good. Good. I'm gonna come check on the patient.
Carolyn fell and sprained her ankle when we were doing the walkthrough up Creek today. We have an emergency room.
Oh, okay.
She's got a boot on. Pulled it out of place. Luckily, she didn't break anything.
Yeah.
So did you have a lot of?
Didn't have any trees. I was I kept texting me. I'm like,
Can't do much.
yeah, I'm like, this must be a lot of things. Like, I'll be fine. And I was like, oh, yeah, you guys. I'm like, I was worried about this. Didn't even pass my mind that like. Yeah.
But yeah.
No trees. Miriam's across the street.
That tree came across the road, blocked the street. Catherine's picture.
Oh, did the video?
Oh, it was a picture. It came down across the street.
Yeah, no, I didn't.
Yeah, they had to come clear that.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh. I was outside one day and just
The tree crashing.
And I thought it was moving, and I heard a tree like that come down, and I was like, no, what is that? And I couldn't see it. Well, it's our tree on top of it. You can see it right there. Oh, God,
Every place we were outside, it was like.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God.
It's, well, Randy had to go to our rental house. We have rental houses up north. It's one of the neighborhoods, old and ancient, long time trees. And the whole street was unable to get in. He had to drive into people's yards. He said several times. in order to
Oh
leave
my
the house.
God.
I was like.
It's sad.
And then I've talked to neighbors up there since. And then yesterday, our roofer tried to get in to look at the roof because they said trees fell on the roof. And he said, I can't get in. He says, there's so many vehicles here and so much debris on the streets, I can't get in. So he said, I'll try again on Friday. Okay.
I know, it's gonna be a long time cleanup.
Yep. How are you doing, Jack?
Good, how are you? Storm?
All righty. How you doing? And we're the ones who are
Instead of.
American generators. A lot of neighbors have generators. They were laughing.
And I didn't realize, I was going through it, I was like, hey, support Teresa's.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, that was so funny today, because it had just started to rain and I see this lady coming in my backyard. I'm like, what's this lady? And I thought she was telling me about the skunk that we saw earlier today. I thought, maybe she was skunk. It was no, she was just checking it out. She's on the Board of Adjustments, doing her job. It was kind of cute.
Right, staff, we're good to go as far as in preparation, and we're recording right now, so just a reminder, folks, we're in this EOC or the training room, we have kind of an always on, system, and try to keep your voices quiet unless you're speaking, and of course, project.
We're recording. Barbara, Attorney Barbara is with us online. Hello, Barbara, can you hear us?
Hello.
Hi,
Hi,
Barbara.
Barbara.
And council, is everybody ready to start as well? All right, well, the time is 6 o'clock. I'm going to call to order the city council meeting, the regular meeting of the city council of the citizens of Valley, Texas for Tuesday, February 7th. Yeah. First of all, I'm glad to see everyone, and I hope that everybody is doing okay and is recovering from last week's emergency and the winter storm that we had come through. Certainly, it had echoes of 2 years ago, which felt a little too close for comfort at times, but this one had some different effects and different recovery that we're working on, for the next little bit as well.
Something's waiting every time someone opens that door.
And I also just want to specifically call out, the efforts of the staff during last week in servicing our residents and servicing our city. Certainly the beginning with the police and their check-ins with the residents and having equipment ready for residents to take home, especially the theaters, which I brought mine back today and was thankful for that. As well as opening up their building to allow people to come in and get warm in cars and electrolyze them. And then of course the public works, for all the hard work they did, is one of the after effects of this storm. That was much different than even 2021 was all the tree damage that we had and just making sure that it was safe to drive and even move around. And then the post recovery, cleanup effort that we're going to be doing for the next few weeks, we'll cover in the staff updates as well. So thank you to staff and thank you to all staff that came to us overtime that came and stayed the night, just made sure that we were doing our part for the residents. That being said, I hope this isn't a regular occurrence, but it's also one of those times that we can take lessons learned, from these events and see how we can do better. I certainly think that every time we take something away that's of importance to preserve for this is going forward. And so, make sure that we have a chance to collect that information from both residents, but from council, from staff as well. With that, council, we're going to go into our public comments. As a note, we do have 3 comments on open town hall. One of them or 2 of them are for later agenda items. And that's the speaker here, or the writer who might want to speak to that later. And one's related to the winter storm, and we'll try to get an update from staff regarding that question as opposed on open town hall as well. So with that, we'll invite members of the public who wish to speak to items that are not on the agenda, or they can't stay for the later agenda items to speak at this time. No, you just have to speak loudly.
There's
Okay.
a speaker behind you and a speaker up here, so.
Good, I just want to know where to aim my voice. I also want to thank staff for all the amazing things that they did during that, and I'm certainly willing to volunteer for several things I think we ought to do in the future, and I put those things in writing, so hopefully those things will happen. The other thing that I wanted to speak to is about the goodness, never mind, right? Well, I'd like to see some things on the agenda clarified. I think other people need to speak to that as well. And I may have to come back because still having great thoughts. I'll be back.
Good evening, Susan Durso, 6 Pillow, and I want to echo what's been said. I certainly appreciate all that the city does for us. It's one of the joys of living in this small town is having the services that we do in our city. And I want to thank city staff for making this room available to us, and you know, being able to come here and charge our phones and stuff was nice. But also just this morning waking up and seeing that the Public Works was out there already spending some time helping us get rid of the, you know, debris from all the limbs that were down. That was just really nice, and I appreciate it very, very much. And I'm sure everybody else in the city does as well. But the reason that I came tonight and I wanted to speak is you have an item under your executive session about potentially talking about acquisition of real property. And I, as you all know, have represented governments before and am not confused at all about as to why that would be discussed in executive session, except that the problem without identifying which piece of real property y'all want to discuss is that it makes it impossible for the public to comment on whether that acquisition makes sense. Regardless of what you might discuss with regard to valuation or terms of contract, without knowing what property it is that's problematic because I can't even know whether or where it is or why would we buy it or why we wouldn't buy it or what value would it have to the city. I know that in recent weeks and months, city council, I'm going to say years, city councils have been, I think, excessively concerned with our reserves and increasing those reserves. And so it seems to me that, you know, right now we have some properties we haven't even done anything with that we already own. So I would like to, y'all, I'm sure you received some direction about the nature of confidentiality when it comes to discussing acquisition of real property for the council, but that does not necessarily include the location of it. So that would be very helpful to know. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Yeah, I have to leave tonight relatively quickly. So I was going to say one more addition, I forgot to write, addition to what I've commented on item number 9. And I wondered if you would allow that in one sentence basically, or 2 sentences. Okay. The addition is the lead in polyvinyl chloride won't oxidize it. But in that chlorine, but if you are going to entertain citizens in that room with children, and they're contacting the floor, they're on the floor, you need to check to make sure that there's not enough lead there, that's not a significant harm to them. Only California really requires a warning to the public for significant lead and carcinogenic compounds found in products that are sold in California. You'll often see a label will say, this product is known to cause reproductive harm and cancer in the state of California. So we want to check that if kids are going to be on that floor, in addition to the off gas and everything else that will bring you that. Thank you, guys. Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
My other statement was regarding the engineering costs. As we know, I've been for a while, and the percentage of the engineering costs of the proposed project for Upper Cougar Creek again seems high. When Alfonso was here, I asked him what should the projects be, And I believe the engineering figure was like 20% generally, and on smaller projects, more like 30% sometimes. I can't quote that, I haven't been able to confirm from him, but whatever it is, staff should look at that, because this one seems like it's drifting high, and that's before we get started. And so I just really feel like we haven't had enough focus on that. And again, we keep creating piles of paper, and I would like to see us actually do things and save money to do the things. And this is, the citizens wanted a small project here. And so I don't think we need to make huge rooms of expensive pieces of paper if we can do our planning and create our trail. Thank you.
Any other members of the public at this time? Right.
I just have a question, I don't know when to.
You can ask questions to staff.
Staff or Barbara, so about the executive session, this happened again, the last time we met in executive session about piece of property, and I was supportive of that. I just don't know. I'd like to know the maybe like what we're council, what we're like, is that allowed to be known? Because I have no problem with it, or maybe that's not up to me.
So Matt and I had a discussion about this, and the reason it's listed as is because we're not expecting to take any action after executive session tonight. This is an information session for council, and it would dilute our competitive advantage potentially if we decide to pursue any type of, you know, agreement with purchase. So that being said, this is not something that we're going to take action on tonight. If we do decide to move forward with it, the next time we have this discussion, we can list the property, and I think that would be the where I would expect to see it listed. Since this is just an information session, that's where I think we need to. I was a little bit more cautious and wanted to make sure, and we cleared this with Barbara, just in terms of how the language is structured. The intent of this is to inform council. It's not to take action. And so if we bring this back, then there would be something that we can more specific.
Yeah, and I know this will not be a satisfying answer, but
I don't think we also want to make a policy to always say it, because there will actually be times where we need to kind of keep that information very close. So, you know, I want it to be known, but yeah.
I'm sorry. It doesn't change your competitive advantage to know the identity of the property that you're thinking about buying any more than it changes anybody in this room's competitive advantage to know that a piece of property is listed down the street and what it is on the MLS. I mean, I've advised many a governmental entity in my life, and it's one thing that to discuss the pricing or any of the terms and conditions, but to know which property that you're looking at does not change your competitive advantage at all. It's for sale, it's for sale.
okay.
And so I disagree with that. And just because it's informational to you, it also needs to be informational to us, because whatever information y'all are getting about thinking about, that puts you at an advantage over citizens being able to tell you what they think about it, because you're hearing information about why or why not the city might want to acquire something in a very general way, not the specifics of necessarily the terms and conditions of sale, because often sales of property, particularly commercial property, are very highly negotiable. But I don't think letting us know that y'all are thinking about buying a piece of property and where that is in the city changes your competitive advantage at all. So I think that's just a red herring.
Any other members of the public wish to speak this time? All right, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is separate. The city administrator.
I think does the city attorney have a comment?
She's waving.
Wait a minute.
Oh, sorry.
You're muted, Barbara.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Loud and clear. I think there are times, and you've even experienced them, when there has been a situation that the potential purchase or the sale is not public, per the seller. And as a result of that, if the word got out that the city, that they were willing to potentially sell something to the city or whatever, I mean, there may, I don't know what, you know, Mayor Pro Tem's topic really is, but there are situations where I do believe that it warrants keeping even the address private if it is something where either the seller has asked for privacy or there are other needs. And so, I mean, with all due respect, I think there's just a little bit of a difference of opinion. I think for the most part, yes, to the extent that we can provide any details, we probably should, if they are not going to make the situation detrimental to the city. And that's directly from the Attorney General's position on it, that you can deliberate on the purchase, exchange, lease value of the property if the deliberations would, you know, have a detrimental effect. And so you have to look at what might be detrimental, and it might be detrimental for word from the seller's standpoint, even getting out that they might be considering some sort of a sale. So those are just some things that I'm just going to toss out there. Again, I am not speaking directly to what Mayor Pro Tem's item is. I'm just suggesting that there are times. I will certainly work with Matt and Melissa and the mayor to make sure that we are able to provide as much information as possible. I'm willing to make sure that that goes out and speaking with whomever has brought the item forward. So I will make sure that this item, when and if it comes back up again, if there's a way that we can provide more information, we certainly will. So that's all I have.
Are we aware of any factors that would make this detrimental to making it public?
I prefer to discuss in executive session, just because that's how it's.
Okay.
Matt, do you want to start off with the?
And I'll just address, so for council members that have devices, there should be a public Wi-Fi, SSV public. So hopefully you're all able to connect to that. Is that creative too? No. There's an SV garage, but that's for city licensing. So the public Wi-Fi hopefully is working well. Okay, so for staff reports this evening, we know there's going to be a lot of questions and discussions on the winter storm and the recovery effort. So I'm going to highlight non-winter storm related items. I think Caroline might have an update on the lift station. Then we move into discussing the winter storm and recovery efforts. So for the admin report, MFA multi-factor authentication setup has been completed by Univista. So that gives us an extra level of security for all of our employees as they're logging into their emails, whether on city devices or personal devices, checking their email. There was a noise issue brought up in the Village Shopping Center, and we have followed up with the Central Valley Village Management, Cindy Lassard, and also there was a new vendor for the cleaning. And then also we reminded TDS, our contact, so they will remind them to not start trash collection before 7 a.m. So hopefully that will be resolved. In terms of projects ongoing or planned, we're continuing with comprehensive plan revisions. We're glad to have Jerry on board. We had a very successful meeting, I think, continuing to trudge through the comp plan with both zoning commission and planning and environmental. There will be a workshop. I hope all of you are available at 5 p.m. next council meeting, the 21st, where we will be discussing, and then there will be an agenda item as well but we just want to give as much information as possible for, the accounting manager file, who's not with us tonight, he's on maternity leave. Congratulations to him and his wife, he was born here in the midst of the ice storm.
Oh, my.
Yeah. But we want to present, basically the research that we've done surrounding accounting softwares in other cities, and we do have a recommendation to go with a more, basically a kind of a comprehensive software package. But we'll discuss that at the next both work session and city council meeting. Also, the fiscal year 21-22 financial audit has begun. We're hoping that we can get that wrapped up in time so that we have that information as we're going into our budget planning. I just wanted to also highlight a report at the very end of the admin report, a report created by our community coordinator, Danielle, basically showing the occupancy rate of our shopping centers. And, you know, you can look at the various shopping centers, but, you know, the village is at 100% occupancy. All together, we're at 95% occupancy. So we're doing well as far as occupancy goes. And there's links to the actual shopping centers websites. And then just to highlight the sales tax, we're still up year to date. Again, this is actuals. This is not the budget. These are actuals. And this chart compares year to date. So we were down a little bit the last 2 months, but we're still up year to date as far as our sales tax. So any questions related to the admin report that aren't on?
Oh, I really appreciate that report on vacancies, and because I think that's, as far as I can remember, we've never been below 90% in occupancy in any of our centers. So having that data really brings a more accurate.
Yeah, CED kind of charged staff with doing this, and we've done different, had different iterations, but I think this is a really nice thing.
Yeah, I love it.
She links, you know, the shop.
Yeah, I like it. Thank you.
I was gonna say the same thing. I really love the detail. And then down below, if you scroll to the 3 different retail centers, you were able to go in there, see the marketing they do for the retail centers, which you could see would be much better than what we could ever do, because we used to have a page with all the retail. Excellent job of having things.
Any other questions for the city administrator? The administration? Go into the works.
Sure, I'm just gonna highlight a few things from the public works report. I'm gonna hand it off to you for talk about emergency response, and I'll talk about recovery efforts for the winter storm. But the bids are due for the combined CIP project, which includes Lone Oak, Sunset Trail, a little bit of everything for a combined project. Those are due next week, so we're hoping to have bids come in. But in the meantime, the lift station project is probably almost close to 90% completed. It actually would have been completed this week, but you know, things happened last week that kind of pushed everything off. So there's just a few things that they're left to finish up about that. Pumps have been getting in since before the winter storm hit, and everything has been operating and running over there smoothly and efficiently. And we're going to do some kind of testing of removing the pumps and putting it back in to make sure that operation works well before we're done. But otherwise, yeah, that's going very well. We'll finish that project for the next week and a half or so.
Right.
So, and if there's any other questions about any public works things that are not related to winter storm, I'll answer those. Okay.
So it wasn't on here, and I just wanna, like, when things go off the list completed, the parking signs on Lovegrass. I know why they're not in.
No, they are. They're in.
Oh, they're in?
Yeah.
Never mind.
They're there now.
Yeah. The one
Good job.
sign, the one sign on Lovegrass that I still would like to get is the one that says no soliciting. It is so faded that you can't tell what it says. Thank you.
And that's a city.
That'd be
plan?
great.
It is. Okay. Any other questions for Carolyn before we go to?
I'm sorry, when did they go in?
Or the winter storm.
Yeah.
Okay.
In a couple of days.
I now get texted pictures of cars parking there, but I haven't since the storm, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
There's one card that's always there, I don't know. So,
Over to, we'll spend a little bit of time talking about the winter storm response and then recovery. And then any other updates that you want to make, Chief, as far as the current case report.
I'll start it off by thanking you guys for your for helping us with preparations after the 2020 storm. The emergency funds that you approved, particularly the gas, being able to store the gas in big cubicles. I know there was some controversy about that, but we kind of pushed it all through. Those things made this response so much easier than it would have been without it. I'll start that Monday night. Everybody was kind of anticipating just sort of light rain, maybe a freeze. This one hit a little differently. We started having accidents late Monday night. Although the road conditions weren't so bad, I don't know what happened, but the accidents started pretty early. We held the police department and public works staff overnight. And thankfully, because by that morning, I think we were at 26 or 20 accidents, mostly around Austin. Austin was so busy that they started sending our officers. Once they got out to the highway, like our officers couldn't get off the highway, so we were using everybody that we had. Public Works was helping throw ice out on Brody. We started getting reports of spinouts from vehicles on Brody. That we had more accidents and things like that this time than we had during the big winter storm. The first 2 days of the storm were basically emergency operations. We were responding to people falling, but mostly accidents. The heaters came into play the second day. Few residents came in and we weren't sure if they would warm up, a whole house. It actually is pretty affected rooms. And that's something that you guys approved after the last storm. We did about 20 or so of those heaters. We had plenty of propane for them, but mainly we housed officers here at the PD. Public Works stayed overnight as well, and really there wasn't anything that we couldn't handle. There's some lessons that we learned from this one. We'll discuss it later. That'll make us even more prepared for the next one. But the residents stepped up, city staff stepped up. I think this one went smoother than the other one, much smoother. It's just, again, because we all worked after that, the 2020 event, and we were just so prepared for it. Again, thank you. We'll be back to you after this event to go over some things that we might need to do even better than we do this time.
So I'll pick up and talk a little bit about recovery. As you know, you mentioned earlier, this was a little bit different than what happened in 2021. We had in 2021, we had a lot of vegetation die off, but a lot of that kind of happened throughout a longer period of time. This time, we were just looking at straight damage, trees breaking, trees falling. I know that there are a lot of, the Public Works has been working pretty much nonstop when we brush truck. As I put in the thing, we kind of have to prioritize the traffic and on the streets and the sidewalks and in the public realm. And so we're working through those things to try to get that. We are hoping that next week we'll get to start doing some residential brush stripping just to remove more of the brush that's coming onto the streets. We get a lot of questions regarding, what we always get questions, can Public Works come into my backyard and cut up my tree? No, we cannot work on the private property to do that. And I know there were a lot of questions. I know there was a comment raised on Open Town Hall regarding oak wilt and, can we go on to residents' property and paint those trees? No, we can't go onto the private property and paint trees either. However, here's the thing with oak wilt. The wound if the wound is not painted immediately, once the wound dries out, the window is already closed. So you cannot, unless somebody was out there putting paint on the trees as they were breaking, basically, before they dry out, they can't, trees do this thing, it's called sort of coated, it's compartmentalization of disease in trees, and they create these barriers. So if the fungus from those beetles had already entered into it, it's already in the system. At that point, we can't, the trees already created a barrier. We can't create a new barrier for it. So we can't go out and do all of that type of work. I mean, at this point, the window really for painting trees has pretty much closed. It was very cold. So the beetles aren't very active during that time. So I don't have a lot of, worries that during the winter storm, there was going to be a lot of beetle activity. So hopefully, we missed that and hopefully it'll work out. But I'm sure there are tons of damage of trees throughout the residential properties, throughout the, everywhere. And so I think that, it's not something we can really go and address and do. We also cannot, hire, I think there's a question about hiring arborists and bringing people in, and we can bring them in to do city work, but not anything on private property. So we'll continue to work to that. I think we're planning to continue chipping brush and trying to clear everything out through the end of February, basically the last Thursday in February. And then we'll be back and do another round in the end of March. Just to, give people time, because some people may take time to clean up things in their yard. And I know the winter storm 2021 was very similar. But I do want to thank, everybody in Public Works, Shannon, PD, everywhere kind of really was out in the cold, was out in freezing weather, working really hard, trying to keep everything as safe as possible. I mean, and staying overnight and things like that. That's a huge task for them to undertake. So.
Yes, can you put out a notice about the oak wilt? I think a lot of residents are very concerned about that.
Yeah.
So that, alleviate their fears.
Yeah.
So that'd be great.
Now, there are things people can do regarding cleaning the wound so that it heals. Okay, wounds don't heal, like a tree doesn't heal a wound like we heal our wound, but they compartmentalize it and close it off. So there are things that people can do to clean up those wounds to make them, what we would say, heal in a better manner.
Okay.
But I
And you can add that.
We can definitely do an education thing about.
That would be great.
Well, and that information.
Okay.
And we created a webpage, so the notice that Carolyn prepared the other day is linked on the homepage. And we're going to continue to put information on this page, including thanks to Melissa Gonzalez sent a really helpful Austin Energy sent out that has a link to it's the Texas Department of the TDEM, Texas Department of Emergency Management, where you can go in as a resident and say, this is the damage incurred. So we're going to be putting a lot more information on this. I think it will be good. Some tree information, how to protect your trees or to help your trees recover from the storm damage. So this webpage is on the city communications. It's winter storm and the navigation, but it's also, we'll keep it linked on the homepage for a while as well, and we'll just continue to put. I'm sure there's gonna, Mayor and the city attorney and I are, discussing disaster declaration. We're already working with Travis County. Their intergovernmental relations person contacted me yesterday. TDEM has been sending us information. So Travis County is in the process of declaring a disaster, and they've already sent a letter to Governor Abbott and his office. And so there will be hopefully state funds available. And then Travis County has asked us to put all of the costs associated with the storm, everything from personnel costs to equipment we might have purchased to all the brush pickup that we're going to be doing in the next few weeks. So those costs will be sent in by all the cities of Travis County. And if it meets a certain threshold, then we may be eligible for federal funds, some federal relief funds. So we'll just continue to keep you all updated on that.
Yeah, and I think just to clarify, we do have emergency funding set aside in our budget that we approved.
Yes.
We estimate is going to cover these costs, but if we can recover those costs through, disaster declaration or funds that come available from the state or federal level, we are going to pursue that so that we can preserve those funds for additional emergencies that may not meet that threshold. So that's where we're the process of working with Travis County right now to provide the assessment, coordinate them on their disaster declaration so we can pursue what we need to do from a legal standpoint to be eligible for that. Mayor Pro Tem?
Sure, first question is about the heaters. Barbara Wilson was, giving me a rundown of how safe they are. I'm glad they were super helpful and made this be unpopular, but, again, growing up in the Northeast, like, every news story, every night is a house fire that started from something like that. So luckily we got through that, without any fires. How were they deployed? People would, because Mrs. Lucas, who lives next to me, she's 95, and she didn't even know. I was talking to her, and she didn't even know that those exist. I didn't know that we had. I haven't seen them on the list. I don't think we should. And they're here. They work so cool. But like, how was someone to know?
We have our list of kind of our vulnerable residents.
Okay.
We sort of put them aside for them, and they've got some emergency ones just in case. But we only had 20, so we didn't just put the word out, they would have been gone in 20 minutes. So when people called, depending on what they were describing, or we got a lot of wanting to the house. And so I think Barbara knew, she's been around long enough to may have needed one, but she was operating. Once we got our kind of core group taken care of, Barbara kind of knew. She had some suggestions for people who may need it. And as far as those heaters, they have a sensor on for carbon monoxide, they shut off. If there's not enough oxygen mixed, if they tip over, they shut off. But you would need to sit. I mean, I often trust just leaving him in the house without watching it as well. But they're pretty good at heating up the space. They're not the answer because they last about 4 hours. So, but if you're really cold and you have somebody, in some instances, if they were bedridden in a room, that was sort of a perfect way to get about 2 cans, about 6 to 8 hours of warmth. It went a lot longer. I mean, they're good for an emergency, but they're not going to last 3 days. So
My guess is she would not have taken one, even if she knew, because she's from Michigan, so she just is not. Okay, cool. And then I had some. I was unclear after it was explained to me multiple times. The utility reversed. Can we talk about? I read it in here a little bit as well, but the neighbor that requested this specifically said, like, can we get this person on like retainer or here for a while to just like make sure they're going up and down. Again, I asked multiple times and it still wasn't clear in my brain. So am I talking gibberish or what?
No, so anytime you have any kind of tree pruning that takes place within 10 feet of a utility line, you have to have a certified utility arborist do that work. As you can imagine, they're in very high demand right now. So we're trying to, we had some people come out and hopefully we're gonna get their crews to come out soon to kind of start removing those items. We're waiting to hear back if they can get in. We just talked to them yesterday. We're trying as fast as we can to get them in. And we've had several that we've worked with in the past. And yeah, to answer your question, it is possible that we set up a retainer. I do know one of them, or retainer, or whatever you want to call it, like a priority kind of thing, or where they are on call utility arborist basically. It is something that could be done. Yeah, I knew one of them is on call for Austin and helps with that. So yeah, I think that's a possibility.
Sorry, it was probably less retainer and more like not just here is one spot, instead just have them go all through the city and just kind of make sure. You're probably going to do that anyway, but I think that was the main concern, that it was someone could go down every easement and just kind of.
So I mean, Austin Energy is already doing a circuit through the city, so luckily they've gone through the side of town here and already trimmed back the oak trees. Because I think the south side of town probably been without power much sooner. They had it come through already. But they're already in here doing a utility kind of clearing. And so they will be coming through and finishing up the other trees, probably after they recover a little bit from the winter storm, obviously. So they're gonna be trimming that now. This has to do with only electric lines. We do not clear, and the communication companies do not clear the communication line. So, I mean, that would be a very, very expensive and probably a very controversial endeavor to do the communication lines. But if, I think that one, Austin Energy is on repair circuit, the electrical line should be pretty good. Those are the ones you have to worry about. Those are the ones that are power outages and or fires. But yeah, I mean, we could look at getting a utility arborist that's kind of more of an on-call kind of thing.
And, the last one, I probably should have asked this, but, well, actually, I have two more things. I should have asked this before. No, this part is, complete the transfer switch.
Okay, oh, yes, okay, so, that is a discussion we've had before, so, we think now, after this, we want to go ahead and complete the transfer switch that is on the maintenance building. So once power went out on that, we would like to complete the transfer switch so that the generator could plug into that building and run that building. That's the building where all of our supplies are, everything public works is. So like when I went over there, the power's still out, I mean, the entire garage is dark. I mean, you can open the doors, but that doesn't help at night. So, and it's not a super expensive endeavor. We'd like to go ahead and use, you know, whatever emergency funds we have available this year to go ahead and complete that transfer switch. Now, how that will work is we have the generator that we have that is really dedicated to the lift station. The lift station wasn't affected this time by the power outages, but we could use that generator to plug into when we do the transfer switch. More than likely though, we would probably rent the generator and have it on site, a second generator on site just to be a backup so that we can have both running at the same time. Then the question has to come up, and I think this is something we need to consider with council regarding City Hall and if that will ever have the transfer switch. That building was not prepped to have the transfer switch. So it is a full kind of conversion on that one, which is much more, I can't remember the exact cost, but it was much more expensive. And I think we're looking at about $5,000 to $8,000 for the building, for the maintenance building. And I think we're looking at 50,000 plus for City Hall. So that's something that council may consider when they come back with that discussion, that when we come back with kind of a lessons learned winter storm.
Well, in the public works building doesn't have any transfer switch currently, or does it?
And the Public Works office building has no.
Yeah.
So the plan has always been that that building would just kind of not be in use. I will say, like, even without power, it was fairly well insulated. It wasn't super cold in that building. But yeah, the plan has always been to not have that building be powered. That the maintenance building where all of our supplies where we need to work from. This building, obviously, and if you ever want the City Hall to be a more of a where people can come and kind of have, you know, it's a bigger space that more room to, especially if it's going to be safe for longer period of time.
And my final one was just that, so in 2021, we all kicked in I feel like that one was way more police department heavy. And so we all kicked in and just like, you know, kind of threw a lunchtime bash for the police officers. And we were kicking around a similar idea for the bike bursting and just all the people that came out for that. And this happened, and still willing to kind of put that together with my fellow council members. But this one actually has a lot more. I've spent way more money on this one than the 2021 one somehow. It's just more kind of like damage instead of just being on it. So
I bring this back around. Apparently there in the past has been an employment appreciation fund.
is this true? And it's currently at $0.
It's not at $0, but we for various reasons, there was some front end expenses, and that line item is in need of some serious lift. I think it was at like $1,500.
Yeah.
Not a lot of money. That's $1,500 gives you a lot. So we did make myself and the mayor, or the mayor will be seeing a transfer to that. I don't know if we could potentially transfer more funds.
I still believe in the spirit of like us kind of putting our cash in to say thanks instead of just moving it over from Home Depot sales tax and just say like, hey, thanks guys. But I think there should be money in there to kind of, when we want to say thanks and when all the hard work is done and all the nights sleeping here, you know, we do have something to go to instead of like, oh, it's the pantry's empty.
That's an item I'd like to see increase
Yeah.
in the next fiscal year budget.
Okay, cool. That was it. Thank you.
Thanks.
So, I don't know if I missed it, but I don't remember receiving any city communications until like maybe day 3 or so. Did anything come out earlier?
Yeah, there were lead up to the event, we were.
The
sending
lead
out-
up to it, but after the electric went out. Was there
I-
anything there?
I remember sending like almost, I mean, there were daily communications that there was.
Yeah, once the power was out, I was sending about there was one day, I think Friday, 3 messages went out. And they kind of increased as it got worse, right?
Were these citywide messages?
Yes.
Okay,
I selected all contacts, that's 405 contacts on iContact. Now, here's the thing with iContact, you know, it has its uses, but a lot of people I think have blocked it. Either their filter blocks it, or they've gotten tired of how many iContacts we put out and they blocked it. So I know that.
Maybe that's what happened. I normally hasn't done that, but
Yeah.
I had some people tell me that they didn't get anything from the city.
Okay.
And they would have, and they're also suggesting things like, some of the things should be like some standard, things go out, like how do you cut off the water, how you do this.
Okay.
And so some standard information that goes out anytime we have an emergency, this is always open, this is what's provided here, that kind of thing.
So kind of like the
So-
standard,
Yeah.
like,
Storm SOP.
Yeah, and so it just goes out right away and so everybody knows, you know, they can access it, and it's always on the website, but you know, sometimes it's not always easy to
Right,
find
right.
everything, so,
okay.
yeah.
I got some email and Instagram. I got some Instagram.
Oh, well, maybe that was my problem.
You know, when, sometimes, I'm not saying this is
I
the
was
case, but
surprised.
sometimes there's just, you're blind to the information. I remember when
Maybe.
Austin Energy was announced, but they were coming through to do the Oaks. And I said, where was the information about this? And Carolyn was, she said, well, we did send out something. And she didn't, no, she did.
Yeah.
But I'm like, how do I just lose space on these things?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, like, we had this conversation before the last winter storm, and communication and reaching residents is one of the things that we had different methods since 2021. You were using, I know, Chief, you're seeing a lot of like the code red system, trying to use that. We're using iCode. I think it's something that we definitely want to look at this time and say, how can we make sure that the residents, specifically their residents, are getting informed and talk about what type of information we need to be sending in, we spend an inventory.
Yeah.
But I know that I was receiving a lot of the. you know,
Yeah,
messages
and
that
it probably did come out. Was out without power and, you know, I didn't charge, so maybe that was part of my problem too. so.
Yeah, but that's also another issue, right? You know,
Yeah.
How do you get to information to
Right.
people when
Yeah.
they don't have power, right? Now
Right.
there isn't the.
Internet went down.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that I think
Yeah.
just from after this, it's just, what can we do to make sure that we're communicating effectively to the residents?
Yeah.
I like the idea of the SOP, an emergency SOP that, you know,
That it's just, you just plug it in and it all
Yeah.
goes out and,
Yep.
you know, there's videos and shows how to cut off the water and we have that, I know, so.
And, one of the things, you know, it's not a priority, we could make it a priority, but one of the things Danielle has been researching is looking at, because we don't have Red anymore, so looking at kind of an updated emergency notification. And what I would like to see is an SMS, which is text messaging, right?
Mhm.
Like,
That's a good idea.
Finally started sending text messages.
That's
out
good,
after they
yeah.
got, you know, bashed or not communicating, but, you know, something, but again, that has to be something where once we have a service, the residents have to sign it. And force people, you know, the residents have to take the initiative, but, you know, that, we need to find a service that, you know, it's low cost, where we can just literally, you know, type something up and then it shoots out as a text.
That would be
If there
great.
are any internet problems, they go
Yeah.
right through.
yeah.
When we have when we have the Public Works open house,
Yeah.
if that was in place, that would be a really good time to get people to do that.
And I also think, I mean, just another lesson learned that I have is that even though I think the city relatively for the first couple days was doing relatively well, right? You know, we weren't like one of the 30% of Austin that was without power at that time. But we anticipating that could grow or could shift, right? Because what we saw over time is that I think during the whole winter emergency, it was between 30 and 40%, like without power, but total, it was like, you know, it was like 300,000 customers, but that was like kind of a rolling, you know, series, like as they restore power to some areas, we've lost power, you know, things like that. And the kind of lesson learned from this is that even, you know, how can we communicate like sort of you may be without power because of the people getting information from the Austin Energy or from these other places. I think that might have put people a little bit more ready for receiving communications, right? You know, or just being aware of that. So I think that's just something that, you know, that this one was slightly different because not everybody lost all power at once. We had power, at least maybe the Meadows, I think, went out.
We
Okay.
lost in the beginning and then we came on and then
Right.
some, and then y'all, I think, went out then.
Oakdale went, Carla and Walter went out first.
Yeah, we went
Yeah.
out. first.
Oakdale,
Yeah, so
and then we had power, and then they got power, and we went out.
And then they have power. And then it was like,
we got power, like we had our commercials, which is great because that means that they can open their doors and start seeing business. But it's like right next door to us. It's like, well, how do I delineate, like, why do they have power, why don't I? And trying to like communicate that, you know, clearly, I think it's something that, you know, definitely, I want to make sure that, you know, we have a way of doing that as well, because it's a complex system. It's complex to communicate this, and residents, of course, who are without power are, you know, enduring it right at the moment. So, the communication, though, just getting information out is something definitely I think we do a better job at, make sure that we can.
I know for folks answering the phone, Melissa, Lloyd, that we're constantly answering the phone. You know, I think residents were hoping that we would have more information. We just did, so. And I mean, we were sometimes just as much as anyone that was checking the Austin, you know, I was following her Twitter and, you know, I was just trying to get as much information.
And that's the same thing, you're iced in too, and we want you to stay off the roads also for
Right.
your safety.
Right.
And so you don't have eyes on the situation, and so we understand it.
So tomorrow night, we have the CED meeting and our chair, Clayton Stice, who worked for Austin Energy for years, has master's or doctorate in electrical engineering and also ERCOT. During the liaison report, he's asked that we discuss our electrical needs and such like that. And he's got some ideas on things the city can do. So we're going to have that discussion with him. I want to listen in and just that will be during the liaison report.
Any other questions for?
One, just like anecdote also, I think y'all did a great job. I think we've just kind of like,
Yeah.
you know, power can't really do anything about, but compared to, you know, this might just be Kirk Watson trying to like, you know, stamp his, you know, show he's the new guy in town, but they might fire the city manager in Austin over what happened there.
Mhm.
And so
He's on the hot seat.
it's Sunset Valley, it's good to be here.
What was interesting too, you can sign up for alerts on Austin Energy, which I did, but I signed up for them like the day the power went out. And they sent me a text next day saying, there's a power outage at your house. And I was like, yes, I was. But they weren't very good about sending out notices at all.
Yeah, the nice ones were the spectrum alerts saying your power out, or your
Internet out.
Internet out, and
Yeah.
my power's out, what am I gonna do?
I know, so.
Mayor, I think we have a public.
I just, didn't hear this mentioned, I had put it in print, but I wanted to make sure every single person in this room heard it. Because I heard it from a fairly reliable source that this building complex is not on the priority grid. So I just want to make sure that it got delisted when we did our renovation. And I'm like, I'm reading the City of Austin article and say, you'll go back priority, you should have been priority one, that this little grid was. And so I just want everybody in this room and perhaps my information is wrong, but it was from a public utilities attorney, so but the likelihood of and that we mentioned before, and just didn't get taken care of in the previous administration. And so I want to make sure that it gets carried one, because all these things we're talking about are a lot less of an issue if we're priority one. And so to me, that's just something I want to see, that the ball doesn't get dropped on. And I'm just saying it in front of all these people in this room, so that no one forgets smaller and tougher, to make sure that happens. It may go slowly, but I don't think it will. But I think that the Austin Energy would be responsive at this particular moment. And so it needs me to make sure, because this part of the city should have been, if you're on Lonoke or whatever the grid is here, you probably would have come up faster. And so, I just want to make sure that everybody's keeping that on the list, that we are, that at least our safe space is the #1 priority. And so, I'm going to just make sure that happens. Anyway, that's all.
Any other questions? Any, either liquor storm or any of the items on the staff report? Okay, we're gonna move on to, item number 4, which is consideration of agenda items for approval on the Senate. If there anybody wants to nominate, Councilor Rosen.
I move to approve agenda item number 5, number 6, and number 7 on consent.
Permission to approve on December 5, 6, and 7. Anybody want to pull one of those items?
Well, I gotta look at it first. Just gotta find them. All right.
It's here.
Just find it.
Is there a second for that motion? Sorry.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Listening. We approve on consent item number 5, approval of the minutes from the January 17th, 2023 regular meeting and work session and January 28th, 2023 fall meeting. Item number 6, acceptance of the resignation of Jenny Lee Leader from the Planning and Environmental Committee. And item number 7, authorizing a release of the request for proposals for document imaging and record retention services. And that'll take us now to item number 8. Consider act on authorizing the release of a request for bids for City Hall kitchen repairs and renovation. And Carolyn, do you want to introduce this to the file?
Sure, so, we talked about this, I think, at the January 21st, January 17th council meeting, regarding, possible renovations to the City Hall kitchen area. And so we put together an RFP that looks at requesting bids for items that were coming from the, City Hall feasibility study. They put together some draft plans, things that, they thought could happen in that area if the city wanted to have more functionality for events and things of that nature. And so those were in those plans that came out of the meeting from the previous joint meeting, we got that most recent. And so some of those items included, let me count that here. One of the things was a 3-compartment sink to make washing dishes easier, because the sink over there is very shallow and very difficult to wash dishes there. And if the city wants to also put in the existing dishwasher, we can install that. As part of the repairs due to the damage from the flood, we're looking at the cabinets and the countertops are all going to have to be replaced, so that's going to be part of the insurance claim there. But there are some different options for countertops. So what we did was put in different options that can be presented, and then the council can decide which option they would like best. For between stainless steel, and stainless steel went in there because that's obviously the most like easy to keep clean and, you know, sanitize and things like that, to, you know, a quartz granite type thing or some other durable surface. One of the things that was in the plan there was a commercial fridge and freezer, so a slightly larger fridge or freezer, an ice maker, warming oven. One of the things you can actually take off, because Preserve Pro was already having to replace the lighting in the room, that was part of their thing. They're gonna take out, they'll do the lighting, so that's not gonna be part of that, that will be covered, because the lighting was having to flood anyhow. So this is kind of where we're at with these items, so council can look at these items and add, take away, and you can, you know, go out for bids, to this.
I was just gonna just to reiterate, because I think, you know, maybe there's some confusion, and we do have the next agenda item is the continuation of our, you know, city hall renovations. And this is something that, you know, Carolyn and I went over with our attorney as far as working with ServPro, right? So at the last council meeting, council authorized ServPro to begin repairs. What this, you know, RFP is really kind of outside the scope. Yes, there are repairs. We'll get some insurance money, like Carolyn said, for the cabinets. But we were already planning, you know, in that feasibility study and kind of reimagining City Hall as a community center. There were already some things we wanted to do to make that kitchen better. So that's really outside of the scope of repairing City Hall to becoming a functional, council chamber. You don't have to have a kitchen to have, to make the building work. So that is why you're seeing an RFP, because it's really outside of the scope of getting City Hall functioning. So, but we already did, this is even pre the December, water damage event. There was already $150,000 that council allocated for this fiscal year for some of the projects like the water fountain and some of the other projects that we were planning on doing. So just wanted to kind of to emphasize that that's why you're seeing this RFP, and it's not, I mean, there will be some money recouped from the kitchen, right? From
the kitchen system, of it will be approved for, like I said, the cabinets and the, and countertops and all of that. And so the way this will work is that we also are getting like a preliminary design as part of their bid, because we don't want to compare a bid or like the 2 cabinets versus somebody's, 6 cabinets. And so we want to be able to say, okay, well, this is what we're getting for the money. So what would happen is we would get these kind of preliminary designs, kind of given to us, and the cost estimates, and we'll bring this back to kind of look at and see if that's, which one they would like.
That's for Rosenberg, did you go for some of this one?
Yeah, so when you go out for bids, that's one thing, but when other things were eliminated, you're wondering why. For instance, when you say we're getting a 3-compartment sink, I'm like, why a 3-compartment sink? Who wants to wash dishes? We have a dishwasher.
Need one.
So 3-compartment sinks are pretty standard as far as a washing station. So when you have a 3-compartment sink, especially if you're going to do like a more prep style area, you have your wash, rinse, sanitize basins, is how the compartment sinks work. I mean, that's, you can look at that too. You can just install a regular ADA sink, but I think we need better sinks.
So having been with the Arts Commission for many years and done all kinds of events there where we serve food and everything, that the sink that we had in there was not functional. A 3-compartment sink, you can have stuff rinsing, you can have we have big serving dishes. We have, we do the World Art and Culture events. We have all these big trays. You can't do anything in a really small, shallow sink. And you can't really put them all in the dishwasher, especially without getting all the gunk off. So having a 3-compartment sink would be really, really helpful to be able to get those big things ready to even put in the dishwasher if they would fit.
And I would recommend probably the 3-compartment sink over taking the dishwasher back.
I'd take the dishwasher out, to tell you the truth, because
Because it's
You
only
also use the dishwasher?
not in that building.
But once people move back into that building, will they use the dishwasher?
it could be used, but I mean, I think that having a 3-compartment sink is, if we're really gonna make that our like, event center, I think that's
Yeah,
the
I
way to
agree.
go
Okay.
versus having the dishwasher.
and then
I mean, we don't have a dishwasher in Public Works, and
Everybody just
we
washes their own
take turns washing
dishes.
this and we have a dish rack, right?
Okay.
So, I mean,
So when people would have events there, would they use the dishwasher?
You need both.
I kind of think I'm kind of thinking you need both.
I mean,
I never
it's
used
scope,
it.
right? Yeah, so we can price it out and.
Yeah, we can look at it.
And I mean,
I think we're keeping the existing dishwasher.
Yeah.
Basically. is what
Okay,
we-
will it fit in nicely looks wise?
It depends.
I don't-
So it depends. I mean, because if we're going with more commercial refrigerator kind of thing, usually those are gonna be stainless steel. So it will just depend, because it's a black one, I think, so,
Hmm.
it'll just depend on the cabinet.
Yeah.
so. Pretty sure it's black.
I've never used it.
I don't know, I've not paid attention to the color, but
Okay, all right.
But this is kind of what we're doing there, and there may be things that, once they get the design in, they may be like, this, you can't have this and this, these aren't gonna fit together. And so we'll have to look at some of those.
Right. Okay,
And I think the goal is also to maximize storage as much as possible, too, so we don't have stuff sitting out
Good.
everywhere.
good.
So everybody goes in the ribbon.
So when we look at the shelving too, we had like regular house cabinets in there. And what we really need are some cabinets that can handle the serving trays. So where you can stand them up and they can, be in a cabinet. So
Like deep lunch.
deep ones and more space, yes.
Do you think there's a
Vertical.
specific, like, do we want to call that out in the item description, like?
I just put like under cabinets, so you want more vertical storage too, basically for large serving.
They at least one cabinet dedicated to
Yeah,
vertical storage.
yeah. And cabinets that are deep enough and wide enough for the serving trays.
That'd be a lower cabinet. They do that.
Yeah, it could be, but some of them are in the.
So I would get in there at least one cabinet, at least one vertical storage or serving tray.
Good.
Well,
Good.
well, I don't think a pantry would fit in there, would it?
You'd have to look at them.
So there's a possibility we have to look at the turning radius from the door. There may be a space for a small little pantry against where you enter into the building. So that's something we'll have to consider. And this does have a mandatory walkthrough, so we'll be walking through and being like, here's your space. You know, all we have are lights in this room right now on the walls.
Yeah, the cabinetry should just be for commercial items,
Yeah.
not just household size.
Do you, do we avoid garbage disposals for any reason? I didn't grow up with one and we have one now. I'm just like, that was neat. Like,
You're never allowed to use them because everything seems to club, trust me, you know.
that's the thing, like people see it and they're like, I can just put everything. in
Yep,
there. So
that's
maybe that we
correct.
don't wanna.
Yeah, it's
you know,
better.
My sister.
Better not to
put
happen.
potatoes down there one time, it doesn't work out well.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
cool, yeah, don't do it.
It didn't have one.
I didn't have one. for you.
Okay.
I would.
Yeah.
You set up a little
There was a
context container.
conversation.
I think this will be really nice that we will be able to have more events and it'll be easier and very pleasant, right?
Sounds like it's the start of a motion.
Oh, yes. Let's go back to can I go back to the
Oh. so the word, yes.
agenda item?
Language.
Right there. Number 8. I move to authorize the release of a request for bids for City Hall kitchen repairs and renovations with the changes mentioned today.
Second.
Any further discussion on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Approve that item. Moving on to agenda item number 9, consider an act on the approval of luxury vinyl tile LVT flooring to be installed throughout the building by Servpro for City Hall repairs and renovations. And Council's reminder, we did have we got a comment on this, but I'll let Carolyn also introduce this item. Kind of another Carolyn for my market question.
So yeah, this is the, kind of been, at the council meeting in January, we talked about the flooring, what the options are for the flooring. And I know that this has been kind of a long-term discussion too, that we've had about flooring the City Hall, about sound mitigation and things of that nature. So we did try, Servpro did try to buff the floor, and I know some of you got to see the floor look like afterwards, some of you did not when we were at the meeting. Seems like a lifetime ago, in January. So we saw that the floor was a lot darker, very dull kind of looking than before. And the floor continues to kind of effervesce in some places. So if you don't know what that is, that's when the floor starts reacting. Stuff within the concrete kind of starts to kind of come up out of the concrete and creates this kind of white powdery surface to it. So Servpro does not think it's going to be kind of a salvageable thing. So what they do now is then they've gone back to the insurance company and said, hey, buffing, which is kind of the base layer stuff, does not work. So then they asked, okay, well, next step to repair concrete would be a polished, pretty big polish job in the building, which is a lot more expensive. And so if the city is wanting to go into a different flooring, something that can also help with a little bit of sound absorption, now is the time to look at doing a different style of floor. And so I know, there's many options for flooring, of course, and there's LVT that we're presenting here. You can go with carpet, you can go with hardwood, or whatever it is. LVT tends to have the most durability. It's waterproof. It has, it just is pretty long lasting. It's got a pretty good warranties on it. If you think of the impact insulation standards for flooring, you'll have floors like concrete, which has standards of about 30 or so. This one has closer to, like, this is 60, is rated 66. So you can get a little bit higher. I mean, there are things that are going to be higher, and obviously things are gonna be lower as far as its insulation for sound kind of impact and stuff like that. So it would have an impact on that for the room. It should have a little bit more sound absorption than what we currently have. So we did present some options for the flooring at the joint council committee meeting, a few weeks ago. No, it's really just like a week ago, but, we did present that option. There was some kind of consensus around this one color and the one style that was there. So they did put together the cost for the replacement. It's $35,861. Already in kind of the adjustment, there's about $6,700 for, the existing carpet and stuff that needs to be replaced regardless. So you can already kind of take that off. We're still working on the adjustment if the insurance would cover the polishing and stuff like that. So that's where we are. I know that was some questions raised on open town hall regarding, things of the environmental friendliness of different products. I do know a lot of these products no longer have phthalates or things like that, and then they've kind of improved the manufacturing process. But I mean, and we already have it in other buildings. We have it in we have it in public works buildings. So it's already an existing style of product that we use currently in buildings. So yeah, so we presented that option. If the council wants to move forward with doing replacing the LVT, this can be done throughout the entire building. And so that's the price that is top of the line, and it will come down as we get the insurance adjustment and polish and things like that. Oh, and so there's a couple other things to that. So we have this kind of layout here where we're going to bust out that wall. So that floor does not create there. So we'd have to do some kind of flooring in that area. And then the other option is if we do the LVT or some kind of other floor covering, we can install a conduit into the ground to remove the audio cords more underground into the center of the room so that we don't have to have them all over the floor. It makes it much easier for, setting up for different events and having more functionality within the space, having that under the floor versus stuff taped all over the floor pretty much all the time. So that is something that would happen if council decides to move forward with the other kind of floor covering.
The questions for Scott?
The little room, is that the little library kind of area would that be the vinyl tile also?
That would have to be whatever the new floor.
Whatever,
is.
it just
Yeah.
continue through that. Okay.
Yeah, the staff recommendation is really to put the LVT, and correct me if I'm wrong, it'll be throughout the entire building except for the
Except
bathrooms.
bathrooms. Bathrooms weren't affected.
Oh, and they have the tile.
They have the tile. They have ceramic tiles, so they were fine. They weren't affected by.
And we,
Okay, I take that back. There was a section along one of the walls where they had to remove the drywall, so we may have a slight tile right in that area, but they're gonna put tile back in that.
Given the question raised about the possibility of some toxic materials, can we do our due diligence and be sure we do the research on that?
Yeah,
I imagine all these things are rated for these kinds of things.
yeah, I'm gonna look at it and see if we have, if they have any information that was recently sent. They sent me, because that's where I got the sound installation stuff. Let me check that real quick. And we can always, we will make sure that's good before.
What's our square footage, total square footage? You know?
No, that's not included. Mezzanine is not included. So some of the things that council had asked us to look at, we haven't addressed the
Never
mezzanine
had
issue.
any problem like that.
and one thing Carol and I have been talking about, for just options, and we're gonna talk more about furniture at the next meeting. That'll be a discussion item on our next meeting. But, with the LVT throughout the entire building, we could make use of rugs, and rugs, you can buy fairly decent rugs that are washable. You can put them in the washer.
Yep.
We could have a big, nice rug for the conference room or for that whole new, coffee,
library.
whatever we're calling that
Yeah.
area. So that's kind of one advantage of the LVT is then you can put a rug. over it and
I like that.
wash it.
So based on that, it's like, if I did my math right, it's like $770 per square foot.
Yeah, it's pretty inexpensive.
That's a pretty good price.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
and-
like, man, that's-
And this is the goldish tone, the one with
The
the
reddish,
wood.
kind of reddish kind of mineral.
Yeah,
It's-
that
it's
matched the
more-
best material. Okay.
So I think that if we go back and we decide that there needs to be like a different type of product in order to mitigate some of the environmental effects that might.
Definitely.
The products.
Yeah.
The other thing I think is we're talking about, and I know Matt, we don't have like definite dates yet, but
If we move forward with this, then we're kind of on track for making the building serviceable again for council meetings. I think we're talking about in March or around that time frame, because that, but we don't have to do consumer renovations before we go back in there. But the flooring is kind of like, you know, the big thing about it, right?
And because we're shooting for April 1st for open house to be there, so.
And I guess maybe, well, and I might, ask,
That's not too bad.
well,
Mhm.
might need to get Barbara's opinion, but it's not listed on the agenda this way, but it would be nice, I guess, because if we are gonna move forward with this flooring. You know, I know Councilmember Rosemary, you had some questions about the trenching,
Yes.
but I mean, the concrete then would be covered, so even if we
I know.
like, so, but you still have.
But you have, once you get done with the trenching, you have to fill it in and you have to smooth everything down so that you
Yes.
don't feel any of those bumps in the LVT.
Right.
LVT is a soft product. I have a picture here of showing damage on the LVT within 1 year with tables just sitting on it. So that's the other thing is by putting a rug down, you're gonna minimize the damage done.
Okay.
Yeah, we started looking at some different rugs. We're gonna present, I think, some really cool, furniture options and things like that. We tried to look at, more modular stuff, but it's hard to come up with like things that also have that rustic feeling. So I think we've come up with some ideas that are modular, but have a little bit more kind of farm rustic feel to it. So I think we're gonna use some new items there. And we'll do some rugs.
Other questions? On the side? That's what I'm thinking.
I'd like to make a motion that, pending the, research that the LVT is not contain lead anymore and some of those other hazardous materials, that we approve, LVT flooring to be installed throughout the building by Service Pro for City Hall repairs and renovations. And if, it is toxic, then, other alternatives would be brought forward.
Second reading. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. And I do appreciate, the comments, just to make sure that we're.
Yes.
Thank you, for keeping up on that.
also, that'll consider agenda number 10, consider an act on a resolution to show the city's support for community gardens and to define the city's relationship with community gardens as recommended by the Planning and Environmental Committee. Councilmember Bennett, this is your item, but if you want staff to introduce this,
We can certainly start that way if we were to introduce it.
Basically, I think I introduced this once before, but, when I was working with the community garden, there was, some repairs that needed to happen to the shed and some other things that wasn't clear who was responsible for what. And so I've worked with, planning environmental, with Carol and with community garden representatives to identify, those roles. What are they gonna be responsible for? What is the city gonna maintain? And so we've put that into this, community garden presentation codified because we've had the community garden since we had City Hall, I think, or maybe before. But the community garden's been there, but we've never codified it. So the relationship doesn't exist anywhere in our documents, and that's the purpose of this, to be clear about who's responsible for what and what the community garden will do and what the city will do.
And just this, reading through the, the convocation, that these are things that we were doing kind of in practice, but not, like you said, like things when the shed is needing repair. There's kind of fuzziness, around some of these items. So this does clearly delineate what we responsible for that. This is the city land. This is, we're responsible for maintaining the mowing and things like that. I think it is something that,
Yeah, it came up because the community garden folks had approached me and said, well, the city fixed this or city fixed that. And I'm like, well, where does it say who does what? What we're supposed to do. And so that's the impetus for putting this all together and just making it clear. So if something happens to any of us, there's a place to go find out what the city's role is and what their role is.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, I think everybody's kind of covered it. We did put together, I think as part where the city would adopt it by resolution, so we kind of probably the community garden resolution, kind of put that together to the night. That's this one that we're doing here to adopt this kind of program guidelines of who does what.
Well, I had a couple of thoughts and questions. Somewhere it says that it is, we have to have a nonprofit is the one who runs it, correct? So is our group a organized nonprofit and they do their tax returns and all sorts of things? And do we know they do all these things?
So I think that's part of what's in this now, is that they're supposed to provide that to the city.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
the report.
I probably do, I think you just had once a year, we get information from
Like
them.
March 1st or 31st.
March
Yeah.
1st.
Now, do we still get information from SFC quarterly?
The new, it's now a biannual report, so they'll.
It's a
they'll
biannual
give us
report?
one in- They'll give us one in the spring on April 1st, and then they'll give us one because the grant worked differently this year. It's now rather than like, it's not a reimbursement grant.
It's
It's
not
a-
hot funds and stuff.
Well, it is hot ones, but we just styled it differently this year. It's,
Okay.
that we give the money and then they show this is what we spent it on. Used to, it was like a reimbursement grant.
Oh, gotcha.
But it was just structured differently this year. We got started later, like, the grant was finally finalized, I think, the late December meeting, or even, I think
Okay.
maybe the January. But
But my point is that if we're working with other nonprofits, maybe we have a schedule that, both will do biannual reports or something like that. Is that too much trouble for them, do you think, to do that? I mean, I don't want to
Oh,
cause a lot of trouble, but
yeah.
and the other thing is, can we prioritize residents for plots versus non-residents?
It's already that way, I think.
Yeah, I think.
Well-
Does it say it? I don't remember
No.
reading it.
They have a set of bylaws and they were prioritizing residents and then one year they didn't get enough residents, so they opened it up.
Okay,
But
but they
then-
have non-residents on there.
and now they have both.
So is there a way that we can say that in there? Because I think,
Good.
yeah, I would like the residents at least have priority. And if there's openings, that would be great.
Mhm.
And the other issue I had was really with the resolution. We can go to that. I'm not sure why we need a resolution. And some of these things, they seem more of platitudes but they, one of them really particularly bothered me. I had to call my children. It says, you're about almost at the very bottom there. It says, community gardeners. And, oh, you have to stop moving it. Community gardeners. Let's see.
Provide a positive attitude?
No, community gardeners and their children eat healthier, more nutrient-rich diets than do non-gardening families. I'm gonna have to call my children and say, I'm sorry, I did not provide you that. I don't think we need to shame our parents. So I really, that disturbs me a little bit.
Let's strike that one.
And I mean, it's more platitudes. I don't particularly agree with some of them. It's like, there's one where it's beautiful. And I have to tell you, sometimes I walk by and some of those plots have been overgrown and it's not what I would consider beautiful. And so I'm just not sure why we have a resolution, and do we need resolutions for everything? And why do we have a resolution?
We can ask Barbara how, I guess.
Resolutions,
To codify it, you need a resolution to codify it?
well, you need resolutions to approve. You're not codifying necessarily. You codify through ordinances. And your policies are often adopted through resolution. So depending upon what level you want this to be approved towards,
Well,
Yeah, like, for example.
Yeah, it's just a
Councilmember Reed,
policy.
We did a resolution to adopt parks and open space plan, so again, that wasn't, that, and it's not codified. It's just a plan, so.
It just
but
should be
this
a
is-
policy,
this is
right?
more of a city policy versus a
Okay.
city board.
okay, I think I get it. So if you can scroll back to the resolution, then I just want to make sure, because down at the bottom of it, it says, we certified everything above is true. And I'm not sure everything up there is true. And so, I don't like that one of the children. I don't know if that's true or not.
We
Um,
can simplify the resolution a lot.
Yeah, if we just simplify it and say, we support the community garden program and that's about, something like that. I think all the platitudes,
I think it was picked up from what city?
I'm sure it was
can't
copied
remember.
from something,
Yeah.
so I think that's what happened, so.
You just said the first one.
Yeah, and Barbara, wouldn't you say this is the one I highlighted is probably the most significant one? Because this is what we're trying to do is define the
That's- yes.
relationship between. Yeah, and also just, because I had a question for Carolyn about this is also, just to make everyone clear, so the city only has one, we only have a relationship with one community garden organization, but this policy is, we don't know if there could in the future be a second
Okay,
organization, but it's not limited to just the Sunset Valley Organic Community Garden.
Mhm.
It could, we could have another one. I don't know if we ever will, but it's supposed to be this is the city's relationship with any.
Yeah, you could have
community garden.
something out of food forest somewhere, whatever.
okay.
Is it Rosemary?
I have a couple of questions, and just for understanding more. We call it a community garden. Why don't we call it a city garden? Is there a reason?
Well, I think there's a community garden club who kind of manages it. It's not I think that's a nonprofit, kind of what they've done. More community, and it's not fully city sponsored kind of thing.
Right, the city doesn't manage
Could
it.
we do a definition page then with this that says, what is a community garden? The community garden is a city garden, not whose community? How wide is the community? The community goes into ETJ, the community goes into Austin. So basically, is this a city garden that is paid for from the city sales tax? Or is this a community garden that anybody can use a plot?
Do you mind if I speak?
And then
We can take members. Or.
And then I have, a couple of questions. And then why does it have to be run by a nonprofit? Could it not be a committee similar to the other committees we have and someone's chair, et cetera? It has to be a non,
It's
Oh, my
been
God.
running for years, so.
I know, but can anybody give us an answer as to why does it have to be a nonprofit?
I think, and maybe you guys know this, but my understanding was that the city didn't want to have responsibility for the garden
Yes.
on a full-time basis, so that's why it has a nonprofit.
And I think the typical model, like, and I'm speaking to Austin, the typical model is I have, friends, they might live in a neighborhood and there's like a neighborhood community garden. They might get some sort of maybe perhaps support from the city, or they might have to get permission from the city. But, typically, it's kind of like the neighborhoods, they
Maintain it.
band together and often will start a nonprofit organization. Just to manage I don't think we want to get into that
Yeah.
business. And I think that's why this is why, as Councilmember Medica said, this is why we're doing this, because there's always been this question of, oh, well, whose responsibility is it, right? And I think there does need to be a clear line. For example, like, we're not involved with taking the fees, like, we don't collect the fees for the plots. That's all handled by the nonprofit organization, and they have a president, they have a treasurer.
How many plots do we have?
Like 28.
I would say 28, yeah.
something like that.
And how many are non-residents?
I do not know at this time.
Jennifer sent out that, and it's only like 4 or 5 that are non-residents.
Yeah, I got it too, but I'm down. I don't have a
Yeah.
computer. I don't have my notes, nothing.
Yeah.
There were at least 3 that were in the ETJ, and then there were a couple that were outside of the city of Sunny Valley. I have had a resident complain and feel like there's not enough plots for the residents. And so I have talked to Jennifer Bone about this, and she said what she hopes to do is work with Danielle and do when someone moves into the city or on a regular basis, to remind people that there are plots available in the garden, and that if anybody is interested, because I remember when I first moved to the city, I had no idea anybody could get a plot. I just assumed they were all spoken for and never available. And then I was talking to Betty Dunn one day, and she says, oh yeah, there's a plot available. And I was a gardener, just like that, but I never even knew. And it's $20 a year, so it's very inexpensive to be involved with doing the garden. So it's a great thing, but just to make sure that the residents are prioritized by sending out information so that everybody's aware that they are available, especially someone who's new moving into the city. They have no idea.
Councilmember Mattingly will open it up for public comments.
Just about the nomenclature. I mean, there are nationwide community gardens, and typically the structure is the nonprofits come together for people who want to do the gardening. They approach cities who have properties that aren't being utilized, and that ends up being the relationship. It's usually the request for those nonprofit organizations to do the garden on a property that's owned by a city or a county. But it's a national organization of community gardens, and there's, an association just dedicated to that. So the nomenclature is usually, it's not a city garden. Nomenclature nationwide is community garden, just FYI.
Thank you.
Just
No.
one quick comment on this, as someone who used to be the president of 501c3. A big reason for this is to protect cities and other kinds of organizations from liability. That's why you have the 501c3.
Susan Garcia, 6 Fuller Road. Well, I kind of want to echo what I didn't know Karen was going to say, which is the community garden idea is sort of a movement that has gone on for many years in many cities and states. And it is much like what Karen said, which is that people who didn't have available land of their own, particularly people who lived in multifamily units that didn't have property they could garden, but that wanted to garden, or in communities where there were food deserts and they wanted to create the ability for people to grow their own food, they started this movement of community gardens. And for the reason that Mr. Young stated, in order to protect cities from being responsible for and liabilities on the garden plots, the city would allow this nonprofit to use their land in order to then allow people to come in and develop their little plots where they could. And so that's the reason it's the nomenclature is community, and that's the reason that we partner with the nonprofit is in order so that we actually aren't responsible for a lot of this. And I totally agree with the idea, as I have said in many city council meetings about many different things. It would be so helpful to our citizens. I remember when I first moved into this town, the policeman drove up in the driveway, and I remember my husband and I thinking to ourselves, oh, what the heck is going on now? And this nice policeman came up and then he introduced himself, and he told us that he patrolled our street, and he gave us a welcome packet, and he told us about all the benefits in the city. And my husband and I were like blown away, like we had just landed in awe or something. And so I still believe that when we get new citizens, we should have that kind of packet, and that packet could have the SOPs for what happens when the city does have a power outage. And it should have information. I was going to mention this earlier, but I've already passed up my time, which is that you can get on a list with the Public Utility Commission if you're a vulnerable person, so that they check on your residents, and maybe that's where the police chief gets his list. But we can give that to the 95-year-old neighbor or whatever, or a person who's bedridden, who has a heart machine or whatever.
Because all those resources, if we, that's part of what makes living here great is having these community services, and if we could give everybody a packet when they move in, then I believe in packets. Emails are all well and good, but sometimes it's nice just to be able to flip through the stuff. But that's where the community garden idea comes from, and that's why it's not called a city garden. It's
Thank
really
you.
Not. a
Didn't
city
know.
garden. Right, I know.
Thank you.
Leslie Gonzalez, founding member of the community garden and the person who put together the 501c3. So I'm happy to answer any questions about it. I will tell you that, like when we start all kinds of things in Sunset Valley, there are people who are for it, there are people who are against it. One of the other main reasons is when it's in stuff. I mean, we wanted people to be able to write it off. And so that was another reason that we became a 501c3, was so that in case people want to make donations, we accept them because they can write it off if they give it to the city. And so, and then when you sometimes have committees, where we already have committees, to staff another committee is a challenge in the city. I mean, if people are saying, why do we have so many committees sometimes anyway? And so, and then so the first committee they would dissolve would have been that committee, And so that was a way to also preserve the longevity of it, is to make it a separate entity. So those were certainly some of the thoughts at the time. The people who may not have been a big fan, that could have been liked a lot simpler. So that create that. And there was definitely, I think, in the bylaws, a place where it said that. I would say that when I was a part of it, there was about 4 plots that were just in disuse, and so we had even like the elementary school coming in there, and there was a Boy Scout, there's some trees in there. And so there was some community outreach kinds of things, and things that we did were planting for everybody the herbs around, so that the entire lesson gift that we gave to the cities, you could have free herbs. Although I never saw that in writing. To Susan's point, it was the police officer certainly came up to my door when I came and said, "You could run for city council right now. You could become mayor. You could run for mayor in 6 months." That was one of the first things they told me when I did that. Plus, we had people come with a packet from the first committee, which was, it had a different name, it wasn't community economic development, it was community something, which was what this was started out of. And we gave packets. We had gifts, we had the directory in a paper form, in the back of the directory, in a paper form. We had every single service, including down at Ant Gate and all kinds of weird things that, really, the city does that? All this in there, every single program that the police department would do, those I think were invaluable. And I still have them, and I could get a hold of my neighbors. And I use that I still keep all my old ones, so the ones I can find. I've got about 5 copies going back. And that's how I find people who, might be hard to find, who are elderly, because they gave me their phone numbers back then, and they're still using them. So when I pick one for the winter store, that's what I use. Thank you very much.
The one other thing I remembered is in their bylaws, I just want to avoid what happened last year where we had a non-resident who was the president, and then apparently there were some altercations and problems, and I don't know what all happened. They don't need to know what happened, but I kind of want to avoid that. Is there a way where like board of directors can be a majority of residents? Has to be, can we put that in the bylaws or whatever?
Yeah, so.
In the nonprofit, could they do that in there?
I don't think we can stipulate.
Yeah,
Dictate
but
what
maybe
their
that would be
bylaws
helpful
are.
in their bylaws to put that in that.
But we can't, I don't think we as a city
Yeah.
can tell the Sunset Valley Organic Community.
Yeah, I get that. I just want to avoid the situation that happened, so.
I mean, I guess we could say in this policy,
Well,
And
it's-
just
creating
because
a garden, let's see, roles and responsibility.
there was one individual, one incident, it could be too, that another non-resident ended up being the president, and it'd be all.
And it might have been fine, so
Could
yeah.
happen with a resident
It could
too.
happen with a resident.
And I don't think it's the city's role. I mean, I've been in
Yeah.
nonprofits for 40 years. And in contracts with cities, they never dictated to the nonprofit how we wrote our bylaws.
Yeah, okay, I'm good, that's fine.
We did, Carolyn made some, so I think we greatly
Simplified it,
That's
Good.
good, much better,
the
yes.
resolution.
Yeah, I think I just kept three of them, but the big, kind of overarching idea.
That's good, thank you.
Oh. Make a motion. Okay, I'll make a motion to to pass a resolution to show support for the community gardens and to define the city's relationship with community gardens as recommended by the Planning Environmental Committee with the changes to the resolution.
Any further discussion?
That's okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Alright, motion passed. Let's move on to.
Must be getting
our
close to
last,
8 o'clock.
Agenda item is consider, apart from executive session, but consider an action on approval of the following task orders for the city's engineering street and dirt. Task order for Upper Creek civil engineering and environmental compliance surveying. Task order for Home Depot Boulevard sidewalk repairs and extension. And task order for City of Austin floodplain study analysis. Matt, you can start off with the overview of this one, or Carolyn? Go ahead. I'm gonna pass it to Carolyn.
So this is three different task orders for three different pieces of work within the city. So the first one has to do with, Upper Creek, and finishing out this, I think we said when we talked about with men, that we would also have their civil engineering component. And also to simplify the environmental compliance, portion with Freeland Church. So there's a lot of different pieces in this. There are certain things that, will be required to complete the TCQ exemption requests and all of that. Part of that includes geological investigation. We also have a project that is going around some pretty kind of wetland-like areas, and, with the actual creek, we haven't done a whole lot of projects where we're going through the creek itself. So there's a little bit more environmental kind of compliance that we're looking at in there. So the total for the task order is $74,000, and that represents about $36,000 is just the civil engineering component of that, and about $38,000 for the environmental compliance. And I know that sounds large, but if we think about Upper Cougar Creek, it's a very big area and a very big project. And this is talking about schematic design for the entire property. And we're doing the foundation for basically with the geotech and all of that for future projects. So it's a lot up front, but in the end, we will probably save money on the next project. The next one we do, we're like, oh, now we're gonna build whatever gathering space the city decides on. Then those parts of that project are already done. So that is that task order there. There is the Home Depot Boulevard sidewalk repair and extension. I think we had discussed this, maybe it was at the council retreat, the idea that there is no sidewalk on the south side of Home Depot Boulevard. And that's where the Violet Ground Trail is going to enter and exit. So the idea would be to, and in addition to that, the sidewalk on the north side of Home Depot Boulevard is, there's some heaving and subsidence and things like that. So no matter what, we need to do some repairs on that section of sidewalk. And so the idea would be to build a sidewalk on the south side of Home Depot Boulevard, as well as enhance and maybe extend the sidewalk and make it a little bit wider, because it's a very narrow sidewalk on the north side of Home Depot Boulevard. We also received complaints regarding traffic and safety of pedestrians at that intersection right there. And since this is the half of the Violet Crown Trail, and we may have a lot of visitors coming through there and a lot of people using this, well, we're hoping that people will be coming and using it. We want to make sure that that's a safe thing. So if people aren't feeling safe there now, we don't want that to continue. There's some things that would happen, especially at the exit to Home Depot Boulevard onto Brody, to kind of help make that a little bit better of a traffic situation along that area. What is not included in this in regards to landscaping. So one of the things that we talked about at the last joint committee meeting was talking about streetscaping and the rebranding of Sunset Valley and where we see that here. So this is part of a larger project regarding the street repairs on Home Depot Boulevard and PRW street repairs. Because it's all like concrete work for those. So this would be in addition to that project. And if the city was interested in looking at more of a streetscape, more of a kind of, this is where we're gonna, upgrade some of the landscaping and, change out some of the, add more lighting, whatever it is we're gonna do on Ernest Rosas Way or on Home Depot Boulevard, we can reach out to men and get them to put together a proposal for us to look at, really upgrading those streets. Those are two of our Home Depot Boulevard and Ernest Rosas Way are two of our primary, commercial area streets in the city. Brody is obviously Main Street in the city, but I think Brody is, I think Brody is going to take a special kind of project when we go to that one. I think we're going to have to put a lot more thought into what we do with Brody and what our opportunities are. So there is this one here. It's the amendment for the trail design and all the things that we need to do. That is $36,205. That would be to design the trail and get it through construction if the city decides to do that. The final item has to do with the City of Austin floodplain study analysis. So we've all heard Atlas 14 and the idea that, oh, we don't have to adopt Atlas 14. We don't have to take that information. Well, what Atlas 14 is that NOAA put out some calculations into some modeling on rainfall. And it's taking what was like a 10-inch event and it's really looking at more of a 13-inch event. And so it changes the flood maps and the ideas of where the flood maps lie. So the City of Austin is in a floodplain map modeling process right now. They're going through the process of redefining all the flood maps, surveying all the creeks. Of course, that means that they're doing all the work. Sunset Valley, all the creeks pass through Sunset Valley and into Austin. We're not isolated, we're not separate from that. The same would apply to probably Rollingwood, Westlake. A lot of them are all encompassed by that. So City of Austin is going through this mapping process and will create new flood maps. Those flood maps will be presented to FEMA. FEMA will eventually adopt those maps. So what this process check does is look at what is happening with those flood maps, what Austin's doing, and kind of see if there's any point where in the modeling or anything with their kind of methodology where we can say, wait, what about this? Kind of examining what they're doing. The likelihood of us being able to change the flood maps is probably going to be very small. But what this will do is kind of take us through and look at, okay, what are the impacts of those flood maps and how are we going to address those? What the city steps that they need to take to do that. This one doesn't necessarily have any kind of budget impact at this time. $50,000 is already part of general engineering. And this would be one that would come out of that kind of total right there. What we would see, I mean, this is something we would start now, but it would not finish by the end of the year because Austin's not going to finish their maps by the end of the year. So it's something that we would probably just carry the task over or order over into the next year so that we can keep looking at the maps and everything that's produced. Sunset Valley is technically in 2 mapping zones for the City of Austin. It's not just 1 mapping zone. So those mapping zones are being done at different times. So while one may finish, the other one is going to lag behind. So it's going to take a little bit of time to get there. I think this is, like I said, it was $15,000 to kind of start this work and just kind of carry this on through there. But yeah, I would definitely recommend everybody that goes to the City of Austin Floodplain Project website. They've got some little seminars they've done. I think they've recorded them and put them on there so that people can learn about what that process is. They're predicting that those maps would be adopted by FEMA by 2028. It's not far away. That was a lot of information.
Mayor Pro Tem,
So just my typo, it says 74.
Did I miss something?
Yeah, it's 78 on the box. And 74 here. Am I missing something?
I may have missed. Yeah, I must have typed something wrong. It should have been 74.
Hey,
you just take it for that.
Yeah.
So the Upper Hoover Creek work that's in here is currently only towards an ADA accessible trail, correct? Like that's the only thing that we said that we're gonna do.
That, I mean, so that is what is going to construction. But the whole project that Mend is working on is full schematic kind of design.
Okay.
That will kind of create the foundation for everything that goes forward. So we know this is where the picnic table goes, this is where this goes. And so then we can set up new projects in the future.
Yeah, and so I know there's like a lot of trades that kind of with the funding and the Venn diagram of like, well, this portion is this, that portion is that, and there's a lot of overlap. So we estimated an ADA trail at
200.
200 even.
Around 200, I think.
I thought it was
Yeah.
2.5.
Yeah.
And then there's like the men's stuff, which I wouldn't, might be part of that. I know that we have this like separate, like, kind of fun. I just, we'll have some engineering work and environmental compliance done for future projects. It like echoes something that I heard from another council member about, I don't want the spending of this to be like a permission, or not even a permission, but like well, we did all the work, so why aren't we doing the stuff now? So, you know what I mean? So, we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna, as a group.
It's a community thing.
Yeah, as a group, we're all gonna like go into those projects in the future, but, so this is my side of that one where I'm saying, just because we're gonna spend the money on the engineering side of it, doesn't mean that this guy's gonna say yes to like every
Right.
project down there.
And to that, the majority of engineering would be toward the ADA trail.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the ADA trail.
Yeah,
That would be-
but I love the idea, like saving money and having like that portion done if we do something.
Yeah.
But again, it's like, I just wanted to mention that. The, one thing. It's a small one. I'm a big tree guy. Tree survey, protected trees 10 inches and above plus special trees identified by Mint Cooperative. When they go to work on this, the thing is like, we're losing trees left and right. So it's just like, to me, like a 4-inch tree, leave it on the ground, because that's like, that could be an old tree. So, I mean, I know we don't wanna say like, oh, we gotta spend $50,000 making this trail go around here because there's a sapling there, but like,
Well,
tell them that we want trees, they know that.
majority of trees that we're probably gonna be looking at that are in that kind of category are gonna be your mesquites, and there are a lot of mesquites out there.
Yeah, but like, just this is my, sending a signal out to men that it's just like, besides the ones that are like really invasive or take a ton of water, do their best to like save as many as possible. And that was it for me. That's right.
So I just want to make sure I mention this. In the Home Depot project, I don't think this is part of the project, but when you turn left going into Home Depot, that for some reason, it is different than the other times when you turn left going into the shopping centers. If there's another car that's turning left into the village, you cannot see. And if there are people that pull out, it is such an unsafe situation. I don't know if that intersection could be redesigned
That's
a little bit.
Yeah, that.
You know what I'm talking about?
The Brody project.
Where you
You're
pull
talking
over?
about Brody, so, right, you're talking about Brody or? Home
Yeah,
Depot?
on Brody,
Brody.
on Brody, turning
So
into
I
Home
think that
Depot.
needs something. We'll be talking about it probably with Public Works, kind of our pavement kind of program and where we're going, so I think. I don't recall the last time we did a lot of work on Brody, like regarding, any kind of curbing or anything like that, so. I think that's something that will need to be discussed with the Brody Lane project. I think that's what the issues are.
Yeah, it's a really unsafe, and so if y'all could if y'all could put that on your list to review that and see, and it might be a simple fix, I don't know, so.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Just so I know what you're talking about, because I don't often come from that direction.
Yeah.
So these kind of using this map, give me an idea of what.
Yeah, so if I'm leaving my house, I turn right and I go up the street right here. If I'm trying to turn into Home Depot Boulevard, if there is another car that's turning left into the village, you cannot see oncoming traffic.
Scary.
And I think it's because that concrete barrier is maybe wider and it's not, you can't, than the other ones further up the street.
So it's really that traffic going down Brody to the south, like you're having trouble visualizing.
Yeah.
Based on that.
Right.
If someone's trying to.
That is
I've done before, and I just-
Yeah.
That is scary.
Yeah, we do it so
Just
many
wanna
times.
try
you
to
know,
see
And
if I
so it's
can-
like, you know, and my husband's constantly, you know, if I had a council member, get things done. No, it's not as bad, but a little bit, but this one is, and if you look at other intersections, the left, I think it's just wider. The concrete is just wider, so.
So Jerry just said to give us an idea, we can also reach out to look at signalization to see if that's something we could maybe. do next.
Oh, that could probably be helpful too. Mhm.
I drove down the streets every day and. There's something that the Village River Bridge River now, basically called moment in time, where there's a moment, it's not very long, but, you know, it's gone from yellow to red, and it doesn't instantly go green. You know, for like,
Right,
I've noticed, and so there's a thing in traffic safety engineering where everybody has a red for just a few seconds for that last person who's, you know, zooming through there, you know what I mean?
right, yeah.
You know, it counts for those people, you know,
Mm.
and I've noticed myself on Brody, that they go pretty quick, and as soon as that one goes to red, that one goes to green. You know what I mean?
Oh.
Then
Oh, no.
try and- The people who, you know, try to flow through that, but I think it would be helpful to speak with Austin about giving those a couple seconds of all red time to let to be, you know, sure everyone's safe, and the intersection's cleared out before, you know, the next cycle is green.
Oh, that's a great idea, thank you.
Carolyn, do you recall when the last time there was a signal timing study done on Brody?
No,
Because-
traffic's changed.
Over time, traffic changes and you
Yeah.
have to there once in a while, study it and then retime signals.
Yeah.
And maybe it's time to do that.
Mm.
The other thing that I've noticed is your signals are using detector groups, basically old technology. And they can be retrofitted with, Vivid's video detection and other, technologies that make them more efficient. So that's something to think about on the road.
I think Councilor Young. Oh, yeah, sure. Councilor Young and then Councilor Rosa Gardner.
There's a couple of things that's bothering me about this. One, some of the specific costs here and how they're laid out. And two, kind of the larger context of the ballooning of engineering costs we've seen in the last few years. What specifically bothers me about this is I see line items laid out here for like surveying, schematic design review, and costs associated with those, and a rate schedule for those. But on a statement of work, I expect to see those two things connected, which is we're paying X amount for this rate schedule line item for this line item, so that you can see what all the costs are and how they add up to these things. And that's missing here, and that bothers me because I don't see any justification for these costs. I mean, I would like to see, why is surveying $16,000? What are we getting for that?
Scope of work is what you're asking for.
Well,
Yeah, and it is an a little over 8 acre piece of property. And we also are surveying into part of ERW to capture that area, so that if we require all the surveying needs of this. And that's probably my fault. I think we obviously have the scope of work and stuff with surveyors and those, with their costs and everything in there.
we do get that information.
So well, Tom has that, yeah, we can provide that if we need to.
I think
but-
what it is, we should be able to see
Yeah.
that.
So I have fee proposals, written fee proposals from each one of the sub-consultants that are doing this work. So I have the fee proposal from the surveyor with the scope.
Yeah.
Maybe anything with the geologic assessment. The soils investigation. So I have all those fee proposals that I can provide.
And I understand that, you know, we're paying for something that may be useful for future projects, which we may or may not do. But still, we allocated, according to this, $337,000 for this. $60,000 for the landscape architects, $74,000 for this, which is 40% of that total already, which seems like a very high figure for what we're doing here. In the larger context of this, I went and looked at engineering costs over the years here. And from fiscal year 2016 to 2020, I took the 3 line items we have for engineering costs, which are engineering design fees, plan review and inspection, and general engineering services. In those 5 years, we averaged a little under $27,000 a year for all those things. In the last 3 years, I'm using what we budgeted this year as a figure, and actual figures for FY 2021 and 2022. That figure is now $110,000 a year. A 400% increase. That does not include all of the things that we've talked about that we would like to do this year for CIP projects and the 2 items that are on this agenda item, which if you add them all up, come to $250,000. I think we need to take a really careful look at what we're spending for engineering and what we're getting. I understand that for previous years, I'm not counting everything because it's hard to separate all that out in the financial documents we have. But I seriously doubt it was anywhere near the amount of money we're spending now. And I understand we're doing more projects right now too. But this is a lot of money. And I have to question whether we're getting our money's worth.
Do you have suggestions?
One thing we can do is bring in outside consultants to look at the costs. One thing I would really like to see is if, and this is no disrespect to staff, because even if you have expertise, you have so many things on your plate, you don't probably even have time to really assess these things. But maybe we need an engineer on staff to help us manage this and assess these costs. Because, you know, this is a huge change in what we had before. And I know, I didn't live here at the time, but I know in the city, we accomplished projects before. And looking at the financials, it obviously was a lot cheaper. Even if we account for inflation and other things over the years, we're spending a lot of money here. And I have to question why we're spending so much.
Councilmember Rose and I think Councilmember, you wanted to speak first and then other folks. Go ahead, Councilmember.
I just want a question for Councilmember Young. I appreciate you doing that analysis. If you could take that analysis a little bit further and actually tie them to projects, because that it's really meaningless if there was no projects being done or very little projects, and then a lot of projects done in the later years. So really have to tie it to projects. Can you do that to make that a meaningful analysis?
I don't know that in our published financial documents, there's enough information for me to break that down.
Because
clearly we were doing projects before, like I think I forget what year it was, might have been like 2017. We spent, for example, something like $373,000 on street repair and maintenance. But I don't know how that breaks down because I don't have that information.
Yeah.
We did obviously a very large project to build these buildings, you know, in that 5-year period. That is covered in other line items in here. I don't know how that breaks down either. But
yeah, before the budget was set up, before we had a CIP, there was a section in the budget called just projects. Right. And it was distributed by fund, and then there were project sheets, but there were engineering costs associated, you know, with those projects. But, you know, also that was the budget. You know, we have to go back and look at the actual financial data to see.
Right.
What was.
Yeah, because there was a period that we, you know, during the building construction, there was very few projects going on. And even after that, that's when there was a little bit of changeover with staff and stuff. And there was very few projects that went on. And then COVID, very few projects. So now we do have a lot of projects happening. So that would explain some of the increase. So you have to kind of tie it to make it a meaningful analysis. And I think that would be good information.
I do too. I think it would be very good information. I don't know how easy it is to do, but the costs here have gone up enough to, I think, raise a red flag for us to ask the question of why are we spending so much?
Sorry, Rudy.
If you could scroll up to another page.
Further down.
No, not too fast. Next, go back one. Okay, right there on the bottom. And looking at the finances, I think this is the page. Yeah, that's it. There is a separate general engineering task order that has been approved for 30,000, of which 4,515 has been spent to date. There is 50,000 budgeted for general engineering. The project will be funded out of existing general engineering funds. So I see 50, I see 30, that's 80,000. Is 50 and 30 even tied? to
30
that before?
30 is part of the 50. So there is a task order that's just
Okay.
general engineering that we did that's for 30,000. So if you look at what we have then in general engineering, there are 50,000, 30,000 of that would be the general engineering task order. 15,000 within the new task order for the City of Austin floodplain service study. So that was $5,000 of that 50,000 that is not allocated.
So could there be a better way to phrase that? Just you could say, start with the 50,000, 30,000 is for this, 40,000 has been spent to date.
Yes.
And that way you don't want to add them together and say this math doesn't
No,
work.
yeah, no, I'm sorry about that. So yeah, it basically what it comes down to is that we'll have two separate task orders that are being tracked in general engineering. One of them is general engineering, which covers a whole variety of things when we have questions about something or things like that. And the other is this specific task order for the floodplain analysis. And then, so that's 30, 15, and then there will be 5,000 that is not allocated at this point toward anything. So we'll be, hopefully we will have that left over in the year, which and we won't be coming back for anything.
Kind of following up on Councilmember Young and Councilmember Reed's conversation, like how much work would it be to kind of put together the information to show engineering costs over the years and what projects, you know, this cost were? I mean, I know some of that is like kind of buried in outside the budget is, yeah, and I'm just kind of curious, like how.
I mean, yeah, it's gonna be quite a task to probably kind of unbury all of that. I mean, it's something we can start to look at, but I can give you like this, for example, in 2020, previous engineering firm proposed to do the lift station project and gave the council a proposal for $82,821 to do the design engineering for that. Now that was made prior to, that proposal was made prior to the knowledge that we did not have the original like sewage permits and all of that TCEQ or us to fund. So that adds a little bit of extra work that they would not have anticipated. Freeland Turk did do this lift station project. Their task order for it was for $77,000. So their engineering cost was actually less than we would have paid for the previous engineering for that particular project. So and I can kind of show you a couple others as far as project wise. I think in fiscal year 21, there was a lot of, that's where the numbers kind of really jumped pretty high. I think a lot of things were not, we didn't have a lot of projects budgeted, so I think a lot of things went into general engineering and that kind of kicked off everything. But now we have, I think, with the exception of plan review, which is one of those things that go up and down depending on who's submitting things and how intense the project is. I think, you know, we've got a pretty good handle on, you know, those tasks basically, and we're trying to manage those as well as we can. But you know, I mean, we can start looking at, you know, how much was spent on projects. It's gonna be kind of hard. We'll have to, you know, adjust for a little inflation and stuff because we got a few years back and, you know, everything has changed, it seems, on the planet in the last, you know, 5 years or so. So, but it's something that, yeah, we can definitely kind of look at and see where we're at on these items, what we've done in the past.
And I think this has been a conversation we've had, so that's retreat, but also, you know, with, you know, President feedback over the last couple of years. Is there value in having, you know, a person on staff who can help assist with either the planning and that review process as well? So as a, you know, we somewhat had that before, you know, it's staff, I'm not sure what the current thought is, right? But I think that's been expressed, you know, that this might be a role to have, especially as we take on more projects and we're taking on a lot more of this work. But, you know, I think that's something that has been raised before, and, you know, it's something that we need to evaluate. So, Councilor, and then,
Sorry, do you want to follow up on that and then we'll go to Mayor Pro Tem?
Sure, I just wanted to say very quickly that I do not want what I said construed in any way as a criticism of staff. I just think that we've hit this point. We need to look at what's going on and understand it. But this is no way a criticism of any of the work that's been done. I think we just need to look at what we're doing as we go forward And I hate the idea of creating more work for you,
Mhm.
cause I know you guys are already so busy. But I think it's something we need to look into.
Well, you get the long range financial planning starting, so they will be reviewing the past and the future. So I think that will be a good start right there.
Every other point.
So is it only the software industry that uses the term anecdata? You know that term, right?
What's the term?
Anecdata? You know the term? Anecdata, it's just like, no, anecdata, it's where you say like.
Anecdotal data.
"Use That, then you submit that as data, it's like.
Right. Right.
Anyway, so. Here's my anecdata.
Okay.
I think we do spend a lot on engineering, but I know that we do projects, but. I remember when Wanda and I, at the end of the last budget cycle, we were just like. Just get some shovels in the ground, man, like, we just wanna see something happen, and so I am going back to anecdata, I get this feeling that it's like, we are paying a lot for engineering because we're doing all the engineering. And now it's time to spend money on other stuff, and then we see the price tag and we kind of back off. So that feels like that it could be one of the reasons why it has ballooned, because we're dipping our toes all over the place and never really saying, or okay, let's go do that, or we get the community with the project and they say, no, you're not doing that. So I will be the sixth person up here to say, we should start looking into where the money is going. I have a feeling that you might be able to get a really good sense of it on like 4 projects, because some of these projects that are super expensive will make up the bulk of it. So we'll start to be able to track that. And again, we've done so much engineering that I also feel we might be coming up to this point where now it's time to put these projects into motion, and that 400 might, or not that 400 because it's already done, but the amount we spend on engineering versus actual construction might start to level out. Anyway, the suggestion about breaking down, and you said that you say you for the rates, you know what level people are going to be in there, which is great. Men had the same schedule, and I would like to see them do that as well. It's not as much money, but it would just be good to know whether you're getting, because they had an intern in there for $60 an hour. I was an intern, man. Really? So just be nice to see what we're getting on that for them as well. And then a later thing. Also, a lot of lights in Austin have visors on the lights, so you can't see from. This is what we see out on Jones, where they're back at Pillow and they see green. And yeah, if I go 80, I can hit that green light. But if they have the visors, they can't tell until they're 50 yards out. That was something. Right after she got the job, I said, "What can we do about this?" And he put down the visors on a note that's so old. But we have to get in with Austin Department of Transportation, and there's a whole thing. So if we're engaging them anyway, it would be nice to see visors in as many places as possible. Yeah, that was it.
Who's wondering about that?
You can still tell, you don't see cars going this way.
Depends on that.
Before I open up to the for both comments, any other comments from council? Yeah.
I just wanted to say that as we're, accounting, we're getting caught up, right? We're very glad Kyle has, part-time help. Now, this is a project, if we do want to delve into that, that's something you can work with the accounting associate to, kind of give that task. Hey, let's review this. I think that would be helpful data as we're preparing to go into, the next fiscal year. But one thing I do think, to Carolyn's point about, there was, I think, just on the accounting side of things, just because of the situations, right, that general engineering did become very bloated. And so now we've kind of taken corrective actions. We kind of took corrective actions mid-fiscal year last year. So what I'd like to see, again, Kyle's trying to get caught up, and the plan is that the Budget and Finance Committee meeting in a few weeks, we'll look at October, November, December, right, we'll have those, we'll have first quarter done. And we'll be able to present to you, okay, here's first quarter, we'll look at what our engineering costs are at. I think they'll be, because now we're allocating, costs to projects, I think we'll have a better picture. Hopefully, of kind of, okay, these are our general engineering costs, this is plan review, but look, we're recouping this, from, developers. And here's, what's been spent on projects, because we do, as you all have mentioned, we're kind of in the midst of several big projects that have carried over now from several fiscal years. So let's, this is something definitely to, as Councilmember Young said, to keep an eye on. I think costs are just raising in general, professional costs, construction costs, all, costs are rising. But I think we'll have a clearer picture of engineering now that we have the accounting fixed, and we'll review it once we have our first quarter data. And so that's something that Budget and Finance will look at and will be available in the financial statements.
It was something I forgot to mention. I don't want this to get in the way of actually getting stuff done.
Yes.
Also, we're kind of setting ourselves up for the next time a big round of projects come through and we have a firm foundation to kind of, I see the numbers and it sounds good to me. And so it would be nice to have that historical look back there, but you're getting stuff done, so I don't want you to get mired in Excel now.
So kind of going back to that, like, we, several projects, kind of carry over. Up Cougar Creek would not actually be in construction until, FY 2024, basically. So if there is changes when we get the bids and everything like that, it would probably be part of that budget where we would be able to, but if there's any changes to that. But yeah, I think we are, we're starting to get some momentum and get some things done. So I think that's, more and more natural disasters.
No.
The discussion, if council wants to bring that back as a separate agenda item at some point to discuss the branding and the landscaping of the DRW and Home Depot Boulevard, if that's something you want to pursue. That's something,
We have money allocated for that, so yes.
And so, yeah, I think it's something that needs to be considered, and I think.
I think we definitely bring that back, because I think that's an important aspect. We were talking the commercial space, but also just how we spent a lot of time and energy, and we had the whole committee put together for our, the advertising / ad hoc, group, and the work they did. I want that to, be
forward.
Yeah.
So then if that's the kind of direction on that, I can reach out to men and we can kind of discuss what it is, kind of scope project we're looking at, so that it would be part of that kind of process. If we piggyback on these street projects, Home Depot Boulevard, we're going over Tom and I, Home Depot Boulevard is going to be a big challenge on doing all the construction. We really only want to do this once. So we whatever we do, we want to do. Here, Doug's got a little bit more wiggle room and things, but Home Depot Boulevard, we only want to be in there once for all of our work.
We don't want that.
Not for long.
Melissa Gonzalez, 26 Reese, longtime member of Public Works, longtime member of Finance. I have these figures pretty much in my head because I've been fighting them for a while. Our outside engineering cost for forever, the previous director was around 25K, and it kind of went up to 27. And sometimes it got used, sometimes it wasn't, and that's what she would use for that was the fudge factor, aligning this data. Okay, we've done that up to 50K. That's that pot of money, and I think that's a reasonable bump for what we've been using for a really long time. To double it, I think it's a fair amount with that. Then there's a pretty consistent amount of the projects that never really raised anybody's pathways. They were pretty tightly done for the engineering, and it was pretty much a percentage. And the reason I knew this is because with a few exceptions, we consistently stayed within that 3% building envelope. So we didn't have this perpetual, oh my goodness, we're running out of money kind of situation. So I think when we look back, that's what we're going to see when you do the analysis. And that's somebody who's been watching it for a really long time. I'm not putting plan review money in there. It's not to me on this discussion. I want to say, Carolyn, that we talked about putting a review of the Atlas plan in the budget last time, and there it was voted down in the Public Works Committee. I just am saying that as a member of public. Maybe like I said, I had some word like memory issues. I'm not 100% on anything like that I'm thinking for, but I'm going to ask those questions because that's in my head.
I cannot recall exactly. I know that there have been discussions regarding Atlas 14 in the past. I can't remember if there was no, don't do this. However, that was the discussion of should we adopt Atlas 14? And that is part of that, but I don't think that was the discussion of the city of Austin already making these maps and FEMA's going to adopt them at some point likely.
My memory of it was that it might even be me that suggested we got involved in it and people didn't want to spend money on it because they said the city of Austin had way more money than we did and they were going to move forward.
Yeah, no, they are saying, no, that's true. They are moving forward,
I'm gonna say they had a vote on it and I was kind of thinking, should we be involved in this and that? So I just think there's a whole tape of that, so I don't know if to maybe rely on my memory. It exists in a discussion. Or on film divisional, which is also a possibility. I'm gonna say, when people tell me in this city that we're gonna do the things ahead of time, it's gonna save us money. Like I said, long time member of Public Works, long time member of Finance, I have not seen that be the case very often. I have just seen us redo it and the same percentages of money keep going out in the projects. I'm just saying that's my experience, that I have not seen, I just see it be another building site. So when people tell me it's going to save me money in the future, very rarely is that true. That's my experience. We were talking about a right of way through the shopping center. I've got a 7 points here. A right of way through the shopping center in, I believe, planning environmental, like I said, a lot of committees. And I thought that that was the thing we're doing. I also thought that the Violet Crown was paying for all the improvements on the Violet Crown Trail. Just data I'm talking out there. Randy McAmel did a analysis of the lights in my memory, and he had that model for free. Can't tell you when that was, wasn't recent, but might do it again for free. And because he has his people do things like that. And so I think when we were talking about the light outside of the meadows, some of that discussion went on, but I believe we had some pre-modeling on that, but that exists and it's not going to be accurate anymore, but it is an option that we might be able to interface. So I am a fan of getting you some help as a project manager. I think we could use it and put that out there. We've had help before. I think we've used it. And I think another thing that would be really, really helpful, which previously council member Carmona was saying, is that we always should be able to do it like a vendor billing run. So that we have our engineering coded. So everything we pay, when somebody wants to know is how much do we pay this year to that vendor, then we just have it. And you can allocate it otherwise, but you can always push a button and say, this vendor got this much money. And I think that at least would be helpful, even if we can't do all the other things. That's just stuff that y'all were talking about that I had experience. And as you all were talking, I was making notes, and that's my day. If anybody wants to ask me any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But I think it addresses a lot of things people talked about.
Yeah. In concert with you looking at the engineering numbers, I would love a performance review from the city. We've been in your engineer for a little over 2 years now. We've done a lot of work for you. I think we've done a lot of good work for you. But what I think doesn't matter. So if you're going to take a hard look at our numbers over the last couple of years and compare them to previous years, I think it would be good to get feedback from not only the staff, but the city council on our performance. I enjoy that very much.
Thank you for that offer. I think it's a good idea as well. Council, further discussion on this item? I don't know if it's an option for us to, I know for the timeliness, like the there may be some of these that we want to move forward with for sure. If we're gonna do just to keep part spec, but if there may be options if I consider like review it, further review, but.
Carolyn and I discussed this. I would say, staff recommendation is C is not, urgent. So if that, if we need to take that, if we want Public Works Committee to look at flood study analysis, as committee member is all said. But A and B are kind of projects in motion, so there's timelines for those two task forces. Would you?
Just on the Atlas 14, the city of Austin has done an enormous amount of work to get to the point where they have preliminary maps and reports of that. We're now basically up for review and comment period, where everybody that is affected by these maps has an opportunity to comment on them and have their comments addressed in some form of fashion. And I don't think that period goes on forever. In fact, I think the last email I saw was somewhere around this month to get those comments in. I may be mistaken about that, but it doesn't go on forever. And once that closes, you may lose your ability to comment. Now, after that period, there's another process where you can file, those appeals can be heard and somehow resolved before FEMA actually finalizes the map. And then once that map is finalized, you have 6 months to adopt it. If you don't adopt it, you're basically suspended from the program and you don't have insurance. So there's a lot of serious implications of not adopting the maps once they're finalized. I've heard different perspectives on Atlas 14. In my eyes, it's a good thing for your constituents because if you have a home, it's an asset, and if it's in risk of flooding, you want insurance available to you, and you want the cheapest insurance you can find out there. And that's the National Flood Insurance Program. There's commercially, privately available insurance. They look at the same map, but you're going to be paying more. So this is good for your citizens. And I understand that for some people, it may not be good news. But it's a recognition that their home, their asset may have been at risk for a long time and they didn't know it. They may have been have had insurance available to them and didn't know it. So this is important for your city. What our scope does is it allows us to look at the models that have been done and see if there's anything that we might object to. And Carolyn said earlier that it's probably not going to have a big impact on things, and I would agree with that. I think there's a low percentage of probability that will have an impact on anything. But the rest of that scope is how do you incorporate the new maps and how do you go down the road? How does it impact you and how do you adopt it? That's to be more important.
Is there a website where we can pull up the map right now and kind of see? Because I remember having one in the past where it basically took everything and then widened it as to what's FEMA maps.
There's the current FEMA maps, but there doesn't, I don't think we have access to the 500-year, because that's what's Austin's using right now, the 500-year floodplain for most of it.
Okay.
Let me see, hold on. Let me see. There's another one.
I just want to comment on what you just said about the insurance rates. I had to get flood insurance for the property, and I didn't know that I could do the FEMA, but I did the private, and then later I found the FEMA, it was about half.
Yeah.
So it was a big difference.
Yeah, when you think about it, risk is all about a pool of money and spreading that over the pool. Well, FEMA is a federal program, so it's spread out all over the United States. Private insurance could be
right.
smaller, so it's going to be high. Being part of the National Flood Insurance Program is a really good thing for everybody.
So, two questions about this, number 11. One is on the Home Depot Boulevard, are we looking at the crossing? Doing something about crossing from Home Depot
Crosswalk.
Boulevard over, is that included in this? Like
Yes.
some kind of safer crossing,
Can you go to the,
pedestrian crossing?
can you go to the exhibit page on?
I just want to make sure that's included.
So,
Okay. I thought I saw it, but I just want to make sure.
But you couldn't see any of the print on any of these.
Places across Home Depot Boulevard. Obviously, one is at Brody. And we're looking at ways to improve that and make it more safer. Because there's been some complaints about it. And then the second place is at the end near the cul-de-sac here. It's not shown here, but the Violet Crown Trail goes off like this. This is where it begins and it goes down to 316. And so we're gonna have a new trail that connects directly to the Violet Crown Trail here. And then we'll have a crossing so people can get from one side of the street to the other. So there'll be two places to cross.
Okay. I want to make sure we captured that and that I understood that in the drawings. And then the other thing was on the floodplain, the last atlas map I looked at, and it's been a while, but when I looked at that over Sunset Valley, there were going to be a lot more residents that are in the floodplain than currently. So it's going to impact a lot of our residents if that stays as broad as it was.
It depends on how you want to look at this.
Okay.
And the way you are looking at it is very common. I mean, you're concerned that people who are not in the floodplain now will become in the floodplain. I get that.
Well, they're going to have to get insurance, right?
But the thing is they're already in the floodplain. It's just not shown on that.
Right, right.
And that structure, that home is at risk.
Yeah.
And the person who owns that may or may not know that, and they may or may not have insurance. When the map is revised, everybody will know, including the landowner, that it's the means to visually communicate with people as to where they are in the floodplain and what their risks are. There are different zones in that floodplain that represent different types of risk. And that's how their insurance rates are set. So that knowledge is good. That gives them the ability to make decisions on how to protect them.
Yeah, and that was basically my point is it is going to affect more of our residents. And so it's going to be important for us to be able to be part of that and to also be part of the insurance, because more people are going to want to, I'm sure, buy into that.
I will say that I was really mad that I had to buy it, you know, but then the next year it flooded. So I got a benefit.
There you go.
So, I believe, let me look over here. The blue is covers everything, which is underneath this other color. I can't, send you the layers or all the other. Yeah, so it's this light blue color, which is what they were using for the 500. In some areas, very little effect. In other areas, it does widen out a little bit. Couple of but this is just using the 500-year floodplain. This could change. Atlas 14 could, when they would do the analysis, they could change and do something else. It could be less good. But it'll be out there.
And a lot of the original part of the.
Oh, look at
city.
all of that area. Yeah,
And everything.
that's gonna be a lot of people affected.
Yeah, so we need to be able to know how to address this as much as we can. That like I was trying to know.
People who didn't know are gonna be on waterfront property.
Here for that. Ready to make a motion?
Move we act on approval of the following task orders for the city's engineers, Freeland Turk. Enumerate them, I guess.
Sure.
I'm gonna do all three. First is Cougar Creek Civil Engineering and Environmental Compliance / Surveying. the Home Depot Boulevard sidewalk repairs and extension and CC also.
And I think it's part of the service that we could get provided in the fee schedule as well, as just kind of a follow-on. Information for council.
Yes.
To be provided. Just go for it.
Second.
Is there further discussion? I appreciate everybody's thoughtfulness about this. It's, I know this, the engineering and the cost of them have probably discussed for a long time. I also appreciate, us moving forward on projects and making sure that we're able to take the shovels and grounds that I think we want to be as active as possible. as well. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. All right, the motion passed. Council, we're going to move into executive session now. So, Matt, how do you want to structure this with the EOC on?
Yeah, we're gonna convene in the PD as a conference room, so we'll still go there in there, and then Barbara, we'll just call you if you have questions, I'll call you on my, usually we'll call you. Or do you just, do you want me to call you either way?
Call me when you get in there. That's fine.
Okay. We'll have a motion to go into executive session.
Yes.
So.
I have a move to take a session.
I second.
Pursuant
Aye.
to this government code section, I've done this one before, 50. I'm here for you. 551.072 to discuss transition of real property.
All those in favor, say
Aye.
Okay, all opposed, say nay. Okay, we're moving into executive session at 8:33 p.m. We're not taking any action after this executive session. There's no requirement for everything.
No, it's not. I had that. So I'm thankful that. It's not a good, you don't deny. I'm just saying that from my perspective as a citizen, I think it's, and I think it's a holistic matter.
Yeah. One talking about.
I just, from my.
Thank you.
Yep, sure.
I may get some Cheetos.
Get home, Jerry.
Oh, yeah. That's great. Stay alive in this room. Positive. We're talking. Gotta be. I know. I forget that. I don't like this too. I was
Thanks for all you do.
Yes, of course.
I don't mind you.
But I don't mind that being on tape. Yeah.
And then, and then, um,
Yeah, which is totally fine with me, I don't want. That is good.
You know, insurance, security, like,
Grab a cookie.
Yeah. Didn't I don't. Just like, yeah, that one was like, and we haven't had any problems with that denting or. Mark.
The only one we've had problems with was when we, super heavy snap, map files, they're really. Not with like one. But we have to be, have to actually put
Something underneath it, please.
yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
Right, so we're still meeting at at 9:12 p.m. And we're out of tonight, so.
Motion to adjourn.
There's a second. With the favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourning at 9:12.
Woo-hoo.
Did you second? Everyone. By acclamation.
Yeah, there you go, adjournment by acclamation.
Wait, did I go rain?
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
This is why we didn't start brush chip.
Right. I'm worried if it rains too much.
Good night, Barbara.
We're gonna.
Good night, Barbara. Oh, because of the rain.
Yeah, the wet brush chipper.
It gums it up.
Imagine.
Good night, thank you. I forgot to mention, we also